Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1200 of the War News Stream. And tonight we have big news coming out of Russia. We've heard a Russian fighter jet has crashed in the Kursk region, and it has been destroyed, but the pilot was saved. Also, Ukraine launches major attacks on Russian oil today, destroying one big facility. And also, a Russian train was destroyed by Ukrainian strikes as well, and causing massive damage. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, but particularly inside of Ukraine today, as we do not have enough international news to be able to make an international news segment today. But inside of the news that we were able to get over the past 24 hours, we were able to hear that the armed forces of Ukraine have conducted more successful drone attacks throughout the territory of the Russian Federation, as significant drone attacks have occurred at the city of Novomoskovsk, hitting the Azot chemical factory once again and causing significant damage to the facility overnight, with fire still raging as the news was being reported just an hour ago. Meanwhile, outside of that and within the area of the city of Nizhny Novgorod, and specifically the suburbs south of Kosovo, we were able to hear that another Russian petroleum facility, a oil refinery, has been hit heavily and is currently on fire and burning. Another major hit, and once again showing the Ukrainian return to major drone attacks against Russian oil refineries at this stage of the war. Meanwhile, inside of Moscow in the Russian Federation, specifically within the northeastern suburb of Pushkino, we have also been able to hear that a major fire has broken out near to a military facility inside of this town, burning incredibly significantly, with firefighters unable to control the blaze. Outside of that, Operation Spiderweb 2.0 happened today near to the area of occupied Melitopol, as we were able to hear that apparently containers being carried on flat cars by a Russian railroad train opened up, with the tops releasing a large amount of drones, the drones impacting the locomotives, bringing the train to a stop, and then the remainder of the drones actually flew out of the container boxes and destroyed military vehicles being carried by that very same train, destroying around 13 of them, according to Russian military blogger accounts and according to additional information information that we've been able to receive through the course of the day. Not only that, we have also been able to hear that near to the Kursk Oblast, it appears that a Russian Su-35 has been shot down by the Ukrainians today. It is a little bit unclear at this moment exactly who shot it down and with what. And when I say who, it's obviously the Ukrainians. But who really did shoot it down? The Air Force or the ground defense forces? That we're not entirely sure at this moment, but we were able to get video and picture evidence of the Su-35 burning on the ground. It appears to have landed on its belly, most likely after going into some sort of a fatal spin, but the aircraft was confirmed to be destroyed. The pilot, however, did survive. Outside of that news, we were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces were continuing to hold the lines against Russian offensives throughout the entirety of the active front, including the ongoing Sumi offensive by the Russian Federation, along with other major offensives being conducted on the Kupiansk direction, as well as Bakhmut, Pokrovsk, and others. We have also been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces were able to retake the town of Zverove, just south of Pokrovsk earlier today. We have a decent amount of news. Not a major amount of international news, mind you, like our normal world news segments. This is more so something that would be within the stream's tradition when we first started this channel, which was to pretty much cover nothing but the Ukraine war. Recently, we've been able to get into a bunch of diversified world news, but once again, having returned back to the source, we will be covering pretty much the entirety of the information that we have about what's going on in Ukraine tonight. And we have a good bit of information, quite a lot actually. And moving on into our major news, we were able to hear that the Ukrainian drones continued to strike down into the Russian Federation overnight, causing significant damage to critical Russian industries, war industries, and not only that, a significant storage facility within the area of Moscow. Moving us on first into the area of Nizhny Novgorod, which is to the east of the city of Moscow, we were able to hear that along the banks of the Volga River inside of Kosovo, and specifically south right here at this major oil refinery, it appears that it has been hit heavily by Ukrainian drone attacks overnight. Video and picture evidence was able to show us that this Lukoil facility had been hit directly by drones, and the fire was raging quite significantly. We were able to get these pictures here, which may be from the actual location. We're not really sure if these are stills of some sort of like stock image of the fire, but we do have video evidence of the burning flames from the facility a little whiles away, which we can see right here. This picture actually is from the Lukoil facility, and we were also able to see other pictures and a video also corroborating the Ukrainian drone attack that had occurred in hours earlier that day. And we can see the drone coming in. It actually appears to be a larger light sport drone based off of the A-22. But we see it's a little bit slow now. There's no air defense fire, oddly enough. And it looks like it's starting to go possibly onto its dive. The video ends there, but we also have more video and picture evidence of the ongoing incident within this area. Let me move you all into that right here. And that would be these little bits of information. It actually is the exact same picture, and I'm going to assume that these are all the pictures of the actual facility that was hit, considering that literally every single one of them is showing the exact same facility. For some reason, I remembered that we had video or picture evidence of this. I think I'm getting that mixed up with the massive fire in Moscow today. Nevertheless, we were able to see that a fire is raging on the facility at this moment, and it does appear that it has taken somewhat decent damage. From what we are largely able to hear, it actually seems that this specific area of the facility is used in the production of bitumen, which is a specific kind of petroleum product, meaning that the actual ability for the refinery to distill some form of gasoline or diesel products has not largely been affected, but their ability to produce bitumen products has been greatly affected. We will be waiting to see what kind of an impact this has on the Russian Federation so far on a strategic level, but it does appear that the Ukrainians are returning back to their tried and true old-fashioned attacks on Russian oil refineries, which proved to be incredibly devastating in their economic results when they were being conducted over the course of the entirety of last year. Recently, we have been able to see that the Russian Federation has had a bit of a reprieve from these sorts of attacks, as since the ushering in of the new administration, the Ukrainians have started to hold back on conducting these attacks at large. However, it appears that the Ukrainians are once again setting themselves loose onto the Russian oil refineries and attempting to conduct as much damage as possible and bring the Russian Federation's economy back to its knees. Outside of that, we also were able to hear of another significant explosion, and this is the one where I actually do have the video evidence of a massive fire that occurred in the Pushkino area near to Moskva, and we can actually see that right here. Now, there is some geolocation that can be done here. First, we have a lake with very distinct features near to this area. If we go out here onto the map and we come up here to Pushkino, we can actually see a lake that has the very same distinct features right here. Notice, we have the island right down there. It has this little finger protruding from it, which lines up exactly with this. We also have the straight edge of the lake, along with this protrusion right here that is shaped something like a wedge, which we can see right there. We can also see the high-rise buildings further beyond, which are right here as well. And then it appears that this is actually beyond the rail line and somewhere over in this area right about here. It may actually be this very building that was directly targeted and hit by the Ukrainian attack. Nevertheless, we were able to see that the fire was burning quite significantly, and due to the geolocations, we are able to 100% confirm that this did occur inside of the city of Pushkino.
Also, what type of plane are they riding in? It sounds like it's like a open rocket or something.
Dude, that thing, honestly, man, sounds pretty rough. Let's look at the... Let me go pull up Russian...
That looks primitive. There's like no sharklets or anything on the ends of the wings. It's just straight edge wings.
It looks like some sort of a Tupolev. Let me go check. It might be a Sukhoi Superjet, actually. But let me see if I can find us an example of one of those. And they're going to show us everything, aren't they? It could be this Yakolev MC-21, actually, because the wing structure actually is somewhat similar, funnily enough, at least with the lack of any kind of winglets or anything to help with the aerodynamics of the wing tips. But also, really, every single Russian aircraft that's ever been made really doesn't have any of them. The Russians don't believe in fuel efficiency. They believe in what they call gas guzzling that thing and running out of fuel. But we can see the wing of a Sukhoi Superjet right here as well, and that actually might be it. This might actually be a Sukhoi Superjet, but we can't tell for sure. It looks like it might be an MC-21 or a Sukhoi Superjet. Either one of them is made entirely, well, not entirely, but mostly inside the Russian Federation. It clearly isn't an IL-96. These do have a winglet and a much larger wing structure, or any other kind of a Russian aircraft like the Tu-204 or the Tu-204 and the Tu-214. Totally different aircraft from the one that we're seeing in this clip. Beyond that, however, we also did get additional footage from the ground, once again showing us the fire. And this allows us to geolocate it a little bit more accurately, just to show y'all a little bit of what we've been able to see here at least. It appears that there is some sort of a larger facility that was obscuring the skyline near to where the fire occurred, and this also appears to have been filmed somewhere near to an open area of grass. It still appears that the fire may be a good bit away from the filmer, possibly a mile away or farther, but the fire was quite large and was beginning to consume the area. It is some sort of a fuel and oil warehouse that was hit inside of Pushkino, meaning that this is raw fuel and oil that is currently burning at this facility.
That is a lot of it, too. That is thick smoke coming off of that.
It really is. And it looks like the damage might be heavy. Meanwhile, we also got to see some more footage of this. We actually have another round of clips here where we were able to see the fire burning from another direction. We hear the slide whistles going.
I hear the fire department, but I never saw them. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of the interesting thing. You always hear them, but you never see them. But that's the end of those clips right there, still showing us the major fire that is currently burning within Moscow's 3rd Ring Road at this moment. Quite a significant fire, and it does appear that a decent amount of petroleum products may have been lost in the process of this ongoing fire today. Even still, further south inside the Tula Oblast, and specifically within Novomoskovsk, we were able to hear of another significant development conducted by Ukrainian drone attacks overnight, and that would be on the Azot chemical plant. The Azot chemical plant is something that actually was hit somewhat recently, and it's actually this giant facility right up here, which is about the size of Novomoskovsk itself. Back when we did the original geolocation on this, I was actually heavily confused because they said that the Azot chemical factory was in Novomoskovsk, and I kept looking around the city itself and just some of the minor villages nearby. I never considered that Novomoskovsk's Azot chemical plant was pretty much a city unto itself just by the sheer size of the thing. Nevertheless, we were able to see that a significant attack was conducted on this area, with fires breaking out throughout the entirety of the chemical plant's complex.
Короче, в трубу ебало, вот, в Пропановску газу.
This guy is very emotional.
Ой, бля, хуярит, я ебу.
Bro, this guy started off the video, and before he even started it, he was saying, "Oh my God, it's on fire, and it's blowing up, and it's burning down." It's like, bro, calm down.
Does Ivan know what chemicals are in this plant? Because he's acting pretty crazy, like he knows what's in here.
Dude, he's sitting there saying, "The crocodile is on fire!" He's like, no. Bro,
oh jeez,
dude, he's this guy here, man. He wasn't working in the factory producing chemicals. He was in there cooking either meth or crocodile. It was one or the other because he's a little bit over animated to be watching that. We also got to see another clip showing the plant actually getting hit. And there's the explosion.
And the pulse jet that ensued afterward.
Man, I can't tell if they're cooking popcorn off a camera or if that's like a pulse jet like you're seeing from like a V1 Doodlebug. It sure is loud, though. Well, that's the end of that clip. But moving on into our third clip that we were able to get from Novomoskovsk, we got to see even more video of the attack. Take a look at this.
Ah, yes, the nice smoke of chemicals over the apartments and commie blocks. It's wonderful.
Dude, this dad is saying, "Come, look, little Vadim. That's our major industries in the Russian Federation being burned to the ground. You'll never see this again." Also, we got to see it right here. Bro, what the hell was that? Was that like the toxic chemical ejector into the sky? Like, what is going on with that? Look at this.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
You usually see something like that, like I think it's called like a burn off like vent or something at an oil refinery. Like they'll have that, but I've never seen one burning so strong. That's an inferno coming out of that pipe. That's not a normal burn off.
Dude, that is not a normal burn-off, man. Like, a normal burn-off is like a small little flame. This is literally a fire tornado coming out of that thing. I don't think that's normal. But I guess an attack on the plant isn't exactly normal either. But it did hit on the complete other side of the compound, so I don't really know what that's doing. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see this as the sun started to rise over Russia just a short while ago. Nevertheless, it does appear that the Azot chemical plant has taken another major hit. And it also seems that Ukrainian attacks against Russian critical infrastructure and war industry is continuing to really make its mark again. Russian air defense is incredibly stretched, pretty much thin. There really is no Russian air defense left unless if it's around the Crimean Bridge or Moscow or in some sparse areas of the current front line. And it appears that the Ukrainians are getting right back into the swing of things of targeting and destroying any Russian industry that may be a major upholder of the Russian economy or may be vital to wartime production. And with Ukraine striking and destroying Russia's Lukoil refinery in Nizhny Novgorod today, are strikes becoming more effective now, or are they largely staying the same? It does appear, though, that a large majority of people are saying that the one-and-done strikes are going to be a lot more common. Others are saying that success seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. Others are saying that they just got lucky this time and they're not going to get lucky again. And others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 75% of the audience said yes, one-and-done strikes are now much more common by Ukraine, and now that there's a lack of air defense, and for other reasons as well, while 16% said it seems like success seems to be a mixed bag when it comes to Ukrainian strikes on Russian infrastructure, and 3% said no, Ukraine simply got lucky this time. And I would say that they are having more one-and-done strikes, specifically on the refineries and the oil depots. That's because Ukraine is adding more munitions, and they're creating larger drones and larger weapons to carry more explosive power behind it. At least that's my theory personally. I think that's why we're seeing these one-and-done strikes, because today, the Lukoil facility, which we just saw at the very beginning of the stream, it was destroyed. Like, it was actually put out of action by that one strike by Ukraine today. So that was very, very potent. In the past, it would have usually been maybe a delay. Maybe the plant might have been put out of action for a couple of days, but now it looks like it is effectively destroyed with this one strike, which is a very big improvement on the past strikes that Ukraine's been carrying out. So I think it's a big one. I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm also with the majority as well. They were able to hit within this specific area of the facility, and I actually believe it was this specific condenser right here that was hit. Allow me a moment, everyone, to make sure that I'm geolocating that properly, because I did this at literally a second's glance off of the pictures. So let me just make sure that that is correct. Hang on, folks. Let me go to the original pictures that we had. Okay, so there was a building here, and then there were some condensers in the back, horse tack attached, all that goofy crap. So let's go look at the map, and let's go see if And that doesn't really line up right there. Let me look around the facility for just a brief moment, folks, because I can actually find us the specific spot that this was hit in. I believe it actually was attached to one of them. I think I saw for a brief moment there. It may have actually been geolocated, and actually it was right here. So this is lining up to a burning tank right there. We can see the smokestack. So yeah, that does line up with that picture. So let's see if we can find that on our map here. It's near to an active rail line with tank cars on it. So this shouldn't be too hard to find. I kind of have a little bit of a knack for finding those kinds of things. Tanks. Let's see. There's no tanks down there. There are tanks over here. There's the stack. So it appears that, at least from what they're saying right here, it was actually this very side tank that was hit. So with that in mind, it might be contained. These actual tanks over here are somewhat isolated from the rest of the tank farm, but I would have to say that it still seems to be a pretty decent attack from what we were able to tell, and I have a feeling that the Ukrainians are going to start ramping these up. We do have to remember, and just to, once again give everyone here a little bit of a refresher course on this, that Russian oil production isn't something that is just a small part of the economy or something that can easily be circumvented. The oil industry, or largely the fuel industry around the world, is one that works on a precision schedule, meaning that they produce the exact amount of fuel that is consumed, generally with a very small amount of surplus, and usually that surplus has to be specifically demanded by a national government for it to be created to either keep prices down or to allow for a strategic reserve to be built up. With that in mind, the Russian Federation has been bleeding out their strategic reserve for years now because they have been at a constant fuel deficit pretty much every single day throughout the war, meaning that their massive fuel reserves are actually dwindling down year by year. And every single one of these kinds of attacks are either directly attacking the fuel itself or attacking their ability to stop the hemorrhaging of their fuel resources on a daily basis, meaning that if the Ukrainians attack these kinds of fuel facilities, it's going to be causing a significant amount of damage to the Russian economy in the long run. Not only that, but Russian fuel production is a major part of their economy. And let me go pull up their export tree map here to show you all a little bit of how big that sort of a thing is. This is the Russian export map, and unlike most countries, which are usually diversified in what they produce and export, the Russian Federation's main exports are petroleums and oils, largely, or some form of natural gas. It actually makes up about 60% of their economic export output, and this means that 60%, or about the entirety of their economy, relies entirely on the success and ability for these petroleum companies to continue their operations and to continue to produce their products. Not just to keep the country's wheels turning, but also to make sure to turn a little profit here and there as well. And with the fact that they are not able, at least when the Ukrainians are attacking them, to even stop this, the hemorrhaging of their own fuel resources, this means that the amount of fuels that are able to hit the open market and turn a tidy sum is also being decreased as well. Meaning in the long run, these kinds of attacks are wildly effective, not only at destroying the Russians' bottom line, but also destroying the very logistical system that keeps the civilians and military running in the Russian Federation. So I have a feeling that these attacks are going to be wildly significant once again going forward, and if the Ukrainians are able to conduct a high-intensity campaign, compounding the damage over a short amount of time, we will most likely start to see that the Russian Federation once again goes into panic mode, much like they were about a year ago. Remember, folks, they didn't fire the Oreshnik at Ukraine generally because they were getting beat militarily. They fired the Oreshnik at Ukraine because the Ukrainians were destroying practically all of the oil refineries throughout the Russian Federation. That was generally the reason why they did it, is because they were starting to get into a very bad economic strait, and if they didn't do something drastic to attempt to stop the Ukrainians, it was only going to get worse. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least on that side of the major attacks that occurred in Russia today. And it is actually time for us to move on into the Kursk Oblast, as we were able to hear today that an SU-35 was shot down. To move us directly into the actual proof first, we were able to see the SU-25 belly flopped, sadly sitting in the middle of a field in Kursk, burning on the ground. And we can see it just sitting there, churning, well, really charring, not churning, but charring for the larger part.
And it is burning so good. Look at it. Nice imprint on the ground. It's like it went straight down and flattened like a pancake. You gotta love it.
You gotta love it. It's great. And we can see a still picture of that, and we can also see a picture of the aircraft itself. That is, in fact, an Su-35. The Su-35 is a modification of the Su-27 platform. And to let you all know something a little bit interesting, pretty much every modern Russian aircraft is a variant of the Su-27. And a lot of people don't really know that. A lot of people sit there and go, oh, the hyper-advanced Su-35 SM used by the Indian Air Force, and the Su-30, and so on and so forth, and the Su-33s. The thing is that they're all practically the same. If I show y'all this, and then I show y'all this, what is the difference? There really isn't a lot of a difference between the two. They're quite literally the same aircraft. It's a little bit of a deceptive thing that the Russians do, because it actually makes it seem on a propaganda level that there's some sort of a massive amount of forward progress in their aircraft development, because Su-35 sounds a lot farther away from an Su-27 than, say, just a different variant of the Su-27 itself. It's kind of like saying a modification of the F-16 gets a totally different numbering system. Like, for example, let me go pull up one. The F-16A, we'll go with that. So let me get a picture of that. So, let's see, we'll go with the War Thunder one, because I know that that's an F-16A, and then we'll go with an F-16D. And so what the Russians kind of do, to tell you all about this, is that they'll take an F-16D. This is the one, well, actually, I believe the F-16Ds are the ones with the tandem cockpits. They'll take something like this, and they'll just renumber the whole thing and make it sound like a totally different aircraft. Because in reality, the Su-35 is just a modified airframe of the Su-27. So it would kind of be like saying the F-16A and the F-16D are totally different aircraft. And the F-16A would be called the F-16, but the F-16D would be like the F-25 or something like that, to make it sound like it's a totally different, more advanced aircraft. The reality is that it's simply an upgrade of an existing airframe. It's something that's always been a little bit misunderstood by a lot of people in the military analyst space that don't really do a lot of research, that these are all quite literally the same aircraft. Hell, even the Su-34, which is technically a frontline bomber, is actually just another modification of the Su-27 platform. Let me show you. Here's the Su-27, Su-34. The difference is that the lead part of the fuselage was reshaped and redesigned to allow for a tandem side-by-side cockpit configuration, so that way they could be using air-to-ground ordnance a little bit more effectively than they could in the Su-27. But quite literally, still just a modification of the basic Su-27 platform. It always drives me crazy when people don't get that, because it's not like the Cold War where a MiG-29 and a MiG-25 were totally different aircraft. They are quite literally all the same aircraft, just with different variants and modifications, but they may as well all be lumped into the general Su-27 platform. Beyond that, however, outside of that whole rabbit hole I went through explaining that literally everything in the modern Russian Air Force that isn't a strategic bomber is practically just an Su-27 of a different type, we do understand that there's been no information that's really been put out so far about how this actually was shot down. We actually do not know at this moment what exactly shot it down. And that sounds a little bit stupid. Obviously, the Ukrainians shot it down. But the problem is that we don't know what shot the thing down. It got shot down over Kursk, which is inside of Russia's airspace. Now, this has brought up a lot of questions here, and I'll try and lead y'all through the running theories, because at this moment, we don't really have a good clue or an idea of who actually shot down the aircraft. So, let me guide y'all through it. One, we have not heard of any air defense batteries being deployed into Sumi publicly recently. However, we do currently know that there is a Russian air-to-ground campaign being conducted against the Russian forces currently encircled in Tekhino. All of these clips that we have right here are quite literally all airstrike clips showing GBU-39s and other kinds of guided bombs hitting their targets inside of Tekhino. And those are being dropped by the Ukrainian Air Force, either using MiG-29s, Su-27s, or F-16s, maybe even Su-24s, although that might be unlikely. With this in mind, we do know that at the moment, there may not be any large caliber air defense systems big enough to fire into Russia, but there is an ongoing air campaign. With all of this evidence combined, it's highly likely that it may actually have been an air-to-air kill that the Ukrainians were able to get today, and they were actually able to use one of their aircraft, either a MiG-29, an Su-27, or an F-16, to engage, shoot at, and shoot down that Su-35. Once again, That's just working off of what we have, and that may not be the actual answer, because once again, it's just working off of the evidence that we have available right now. And while our evidence is usually pretty well put out, and not only that, it's usually backed up with video and picture evidence, it still doesn't mean that that is the full picture. There could be a large caliber air defense system inside of Sumi, like an S-300 or a Patriot. It's just that we've never heard about it publicly to be able to confirm that. So with that in mind, what is everyone thinking about this right now? Was it an air-to-air kill, or was it not? And it seems like a decent amount of people are saying that it most likely was an air-to-air kill that the Ukrainians were able to confirm today. Others were saying that it may be a 50-50 chance. Others, a small group, are saying that it was likely ground air defense forces with a larger caliber air defense system that were able to shoot that SU-35 down, and some others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it's certainly no small event at all when they lose a massive fighter jet like an Su-35. Even though it's not the most potent fighter jet out there, it still is nonetheless pretty expensive, and Russia can't afford to lose it. So quite bad for them to lose. So was it likely an air-to-air kill, since it was in the Kursk region of Russia? So 56% said yes, Ukraine likely shot it down by an air-to-air strike, while 16% said no, it's likely ground air defense, and 15% said it's a 50-50 chance of either one. And I would personally say, in my speculation and analysis, that since it was over the Kursk region of Russia, it was likely not air defense. If it was air defense, it could have been a friendly fire incident where the Russians actually shot down their own craft. That is possible and has happened before. But I would say in this instance, since the pilot did have a chance to eject, I think it was probably a air-to-air kill. That's my assumption. We don't know what type of aircraft probably did this of the Ukrainians' arsenal. It could have been an F-16. It could have been one of their other Soviet-made aircraft. There's just no telling. But I think I am with the majority here with a 57%. I think it was an air-to-air shoot down, considering it was inside of mainland Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
So it appears that we actually have a geolocation for where this aircraft was shot down, provided by a Twitter user called Blinska, which stated that satellite images from today indicate the wreck of the Su-35 was shot down at these exact coordinates east of Urasovo in the Kursk Oblast. And we can see that on these satellite pictures, which are very grainy, that there is a blot in the field that did not exist the day before. So with that in mind, it does appear that, at least lining this up with what we're seeing here, and also considering that there was some sort of a rut that was created, either a small canal ditch or a rut of some kind in the field, and going back to the footage that we originally had that we were analyzing, which is loud as hell, mind you, there is some sort of a large ditch directly in front of this aircraft. And as the video progresses, it doesn't appear that the angle changes. We're once again seeing the exact same aircraft, not with any different viewpoint, but it does appear that it lines up with this ditch that we're seeing right here, and there is a specific amount of foliage in front of it, inside of the ditch, that lines up exactly with that. So it does appear that this aircraft was shot down just east of Urasovo and north of Krasny town right there.
That's a hell of a name.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. We're just going to give it the SpongeBob, like kind of treatment. But with that in mind, it was shot down about 25 miles away from Tekhino, where we do know that there was an active Ukrainian air campaign going on. It was also shot down about 30 miles away from Sumi. Now, this is actually making things a little bit interesting, because it actually could have, based over this location, been shot down either by air defense or by the Ukrainian Air Force. But considering that we've heard of no larger caliber air defense batteries being placed inside of Sumi, and that there is a heavy Ukrainian air presence near Tekhino that we've been able to confirm for days, I would generally go with the safe assumption that it most likely was an air-to-air kill that was being conducted by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. It does seem that that's highly likely. We already know that, for example, an Su-27, a MiG-29, or an F-16 would definitely have the kind of ordnance to be able to go up against and shoot down that Su-35 if they needed to. F-16s can be equipped with a wide variety of missiles, including AIM-7 Sparrows, which are largely considered obsolete in the modern day, along with AIM-9s and AIM-120s. Likely candidates of missiles, at least from an F-16 that could have shot down this Su-35, would most likely be some version of an AIM-120C or an AIM-120A AMRAAM that was fired at the Su-35 from possibly 40 to 50 miles away, as the F-16 F-16 was still operating over Ukrainian skies, the missile crossed the border. The Russian aircraft attempted to crank, got to slow speeds, was not able to evade the missile. The missile then impacted or exploded near to the aircraft, and due to the slow speed and high G turn that it was conducting during the attempted evasion, the aircraft actually entered into a spiral when the pilot ejected, accounting for the flat spin and the belly flop that it made into the field near to the small village. There is also another likely option that it could have been an Su-27, which also does have R-27s, which are an older Soviet-style radar-guided air-to-air missile. And let me see if I can show y'all an R-27. That would be the R-27. Now, I do not believe that the Ukrainians have access to the R-77. I believe it's called the Vimpel. Yeah, it's called the Vimpel. I don't believe that they have access to these, and let me just make sure, because I believe these are more so of a modern Russian invention. Work began, was not completed. Production was further disrupted. So it appears that, yeah, they don't really have a large number of these, so it's highly unlikely that the Ukrainians would be able to use one, considering that this has been under production by the Russians, and it doesn't even appear that the Russians have been able to field this in greater numbers of service. But so it does seem likely that if an Su-27 or a MiG-29 engaged the Su-35, they most likely were using an older Soviet R-27. AIM-9s and R-73s are completely ruled out as air-to-air missiles that could have been used, and even R-60Ms for an air-to-air kill at that kind of a distance. AIM-9s and R-60s and R-73s are all pretty much 4 kills within less than 5 miles from the actual point of launch. Considering that this was well away from the border, 30 miles away from Sumi and about 25 miles away from Tekkino, it is literally impossible for an AIM-9, an R-60, or an R-73 to have shot down this Su-35, meaning that it could have been one of 3 aircraft, a MiG-29, an Su-27, or an F-16 that was able to get the kill, and the kill was most likely achieved either using an R-27, like the missile we're seeing right here, or some form of the AIM-120, considering that we can confirm that the Ukrainians have access to all of those missiles and all of those available airframes. So we can generally deduce all that from the information that we have right now, but once again, getting any more clearer of an image than that would be highly unlikely, if not difficult, considering that we only have the information that the jet was shot down and nothing else to go with. But I hope that is our most thorough explanation of what could have happened within that area today, because everything seems to be lining up just right to make that story that I put out somewhat convincing or believable, at least based off of the propensity of the evidence that we have been able to uncover. So with that, it is time for us to move on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight, which actually is going to be bringing us into Sumi, where we got to see that the Wild Hornets unit was bombing Russian positions with their drones. From what we've understood, the Russian Federation's offensive in Sumi has been stopped over recent days. We are able to confirm that the Russian Federation has clear and uncontested hold over the following villagers: Zhirovka, Novinka, Basivka, Lognia, Bilovody, Yablonivka, Varichy, Yovo Mikhailivka, Vodolahi, as well as Volodymyrivka. These names are very hard to pronounce, and it's making me sound like I have a stammer. Currently, Oleksivka is contested. And we do understand that Yunikivka is also contested currently as well. Beyond that, the Ukrainians have been able to solidify a defensive line, largely consisting of the towns of Konstantinivka, Kindrativka, Andriivka, Mala Korchakivka, Novosich, and Sadki, with, once again, the towns being contested of Yunikivka and Oleksivka. That seems to be the best lay of the land that we can get on the active front line from the Russian offensive in Sumi at the moment, and it seems that the Ukrainians are now starting to solidify the front well enough that they're actually able to start conducting limited counterattacks, either with drone forces or ground forces, to be able to try and start uprooting Russian positions and start pushing them back. And at this moment, at this point in the battle, this is going to be a very formative moment of the battle, and quick fire and maneuver abilities are going to be decisive in trying to push the Russian Federation out. If the Ukrainians cannot push the Russian Federations out of Sumi, probably within the next week or a week and a half, we are most likely going to see that the Russians will get dug in this area, and it'll be a lot more difficult to uproot them or push them out of Sumi from that point forward. We will see the Ukrainian offensives beyond that point will start to have a fairly difficult time dealing with the Russian defenses, but equally so, the Russian Federation will pretty much find it impossible to break out from the current holdings that they have, as the Ukrainians are also digging in as well along this current front line. And that means that it will be next to impossible, if not incredibly difficult, for the Russians to actually break through and attempt to battle at Sumi. But we were we're able to see the Wild Hornets conducting their air-to-ground operations over the course of the day, and we can see this right here. And you can see them bombing the Russians.
That guy walked into a house that wasn't even a house. He just walked through a doorway to literally nothing.
Man, he really did. And we see them dropping the bomblets. These bomblets are made incredibly well, honestly. Like, they actually look like they're high-end.
Man, those expensive ones. They're getting the Gucci bomblet.
Bro, they getting that Louis Vuitton bomblet.
Man, they're giving them that metal. That's a nice machining on that metal, too.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was looking at. I was like, man, they actually are machining metal parts. Well, these aren't actually that nice. Those are literally soda cans. But we can see them dropping the refined bombs again.
Also, by the way, I just want to make a quick note. For some reason, a lot of other channels, and of course, they're entitled to their own opinion. There's been no evidence that we've been able to see that an F-16, for a fact, like we've known for a fact, that an F-16 shot down the SU-35. That has not been stated by anybody. So I'm not sure why people are running with that, because there is no evidence to corroborate that with certainty. It's a good theory, but to say it's like 100% certain and it's like there's no other possible option, that's going too far, because we don't see any evidence right now at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to give you all the best news that we have, the most research that we have, but I can only go so far with saying what we say on air without just saying things as fact that we don't know. And there is absolutely nothing out there at the moment to confirm that it was an F-16. Other bloggers might be saying it was an F-16, but I also have to say, no disrespect to other bloggers here, but some other bloggers like to sensationalize things. Just putting that out there. And it's a lot more sensational to say that it was definitely an F-16 that fired an AMRAAM at an SU-35 rather than saying it was some old ranky-dank Soviet-ass MiG-29 with its ratchety ass firing a R-27 at the SU-35 and shooting it down. That doesn't sound that exciting as an F-16. F-16 is sensational. MiG-29 or an SU-27 far less sensational. So I kind of hope y'all are seeing what I'm trying to get at there. There is no proof at the moment that we've been able to find anywhere that it was definitely an F-16. Now, an F-16 is a likely option, but at the same time, there's also the MiG-29 and the Su-27 that are likely contenders that could have shot down that aircraft. Let me go show you all that really quickly. And let me go Ukraine Air Force, because I want to show you all that. Because I want to remind everyone that just because the F-16 is a plane in the Ukrainian Air Force doesn't mean it's the only plane in the Ukrainian Air Force. So let me go find it really quickly. Dang, dude, people have been writing literal sheets of info. Let's see here. Aircraft. So this is according to December 2023, which is not a recent kind of figure. So let me see if I can get us a recent figure. So here we are. Here's the lay of the land. They have 7 active F-16s that we know of. They also have, we believe, about 5 to 10 Mirage 2000s, which aren't in the running because it seems that they're just being introduced, and them being involved in heavy sorties immediately would be a little bit odd because it wouldn't allow for the pilots to be familiarized with the aircraft in combat conditions, so those are pretty much ruled out. They also have the Su-27, the MiG-29, and the F-16 to be able to conduct that air-to-air kill with. The Su-24 and the Su-25s are entirely out of the picture because neither of those have an air-to-air radar strong enough or capable enough to be able to detect an enemy aircraft at that kind of range and then engage it with a radar-based missile. Neither of those aircraft have that ability. They generally would engage and destroy an enemy aircraft with a close-in missile like an R-60 or an R-73, or possibly a modified ability to carry and fire an AIM-9 of some kind, like an AIM-9L or an AIM-9M or an AIM-9X. So this means that right now we're currently shooting between 3 different airframes, the Su-27, the MiG-29, or the F-16. And considering that the F-16 is the least numerous airframe of the 3, and if we were to do the math here, which I'm going to whip out a calculator to make sure that we don't get it wrong, because I'm going to have to be doing this off the top of my head really quickly, we have 23 Su-27s, we have 45 MiG-29s, and then we have 7 F-16s. So if we were to divide that number by just the total number of other airframes outside of the F-16, which is, let's see, 23, 63, 68. So 75, 68 68 divided by 75. That means that there is a about 9% chance, just off of the given number of airframes that actually could engage and shoot down a Russian aircraft at that distance, that it was actually an F-16. That is a 9% chance. If we were to just go with the sheer number of airframes and how few F-16s there was a 9% chance that it was an F-16. And considering that we have gotten no confirmation from anyone today, either the Ukrainian Air Force, the Ukrainian SBU, the Ukrainian government, the Russian Federation, the Russian government, Russian military bloggers, or anyone else to actually be able to confirm what kind of aircraft shot down that SU-35, it is quite literally a slim to none chance that it was an F-16. That's not to say it's impossible. It is possible that it was shot down, but saying that with certainty, like it is a fact from God himself, would be entirely misplaced, because we just do not have enough information to do that, and statistically, the chances of that happening are small. So I hope that...
Honestly, I thought that the F-16 was generally not being used for like really risky offensive operations like that. Like, for example, going into Kursk to start, fighting it out with other Russian fighter jets. I thought they were trying to use those as like fire support, and also more behind the lines and in front of the lines, because they were worried about losing a lot of them, because they don't have many. And obviously they're very valuable to Ukraine. So they were trying to preserve them. So I didn't think they were using them in that capacity. It's possible, but I would say personally, I'm leaning toward it's probably one of the other aircraft they have instead, just on speculation.
Yeah, I also saw someone say the F-16 is the only aircraft that could kill an Su-35 in a beyond visual range fight, and I don't really know where that's coming from, because it became quite clear in the small India-Pakistan war that we covered that quality of airframes do not mean anything when flown by incompetent pilots. So an Su-27 or a MiG-29 could have easily shot down that Su-35, and there would have been no contest about that, because if I remember correctly, I believe it was Pakistan that shot down an Su-30SM, a MiG-29, and a Rafale, or a Rafale, whatever you want to call it, with less than advanced air capabilities, either an F-16 or something else along those lines, or a JF-17, which technically shouldn't be that good, but the Indian Air Force was so incompetent, they actually ended up pretty much running their aircraft into a turkey shoot and then getting them all shot down by air defense batteries, or getting shot down by the Pakistani Air Force themselves. So that would say, that to me would largely lead to the idea that that is not necessarily always the case. We're not sitting here on a spreadsheet comparing aircraft and going, okay, by the spreadsheet, this thing should win. In war, an Su-27 or a MiG-29 could easily have an ability of shooting down an Su-35. And not only that, considering that I just went through a whole rabbit hole, pretty much saying the Su-35 is literally an Su-27. Look at that. And then let me go get an Su-27. And let me go see if I can get the same side angle that we had on the other one. You can even see that here, people get so confused against the different variants. They labeled an Su-34 and Su-27 on this picture right here. Like, that's how confusing they are, because they're literally all the same plane nearly, with slight variations in avionics and computer systems, and that's really the only difference amongst most of them. But let me see here. Here we go. So what is the difference between this aircraft, which is actually an Su-27, and this one that's an Su-35? There is no difference. There is no difference visually. It is literally the same airframe. The only difference is the avionics systems in this Su-27 and that Su-35. And considering that they don't even have enough R-77s in service, these aircraft are being loaded up in air-to-air combat loadouts the exact same way on both sides. The Ukrainians are loading theirs up with R-27s and R-73s, and the Russians are also loading those up with the exact same missiles. So it's literally a par-on-par fight between an Su-27 and an Su-35 right now over the skies of Ukraine. So I hope that addresses that well, at least the best I can with the information that we have, because other people might be saying that it was an F-16. Well, they're actually saying it was an F-16 without a doubt. We don't have enough information on this channel to be able to confirm that. Y'all come here to hear the news. I try and make sure that our news is as well researched as it can be, and we don't go into making assumptions unless if they're incredibly well founded. And right now, there's no credence or evidence to say, without a shadow of a doubt, it was an F-16. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can, at least with the information that we have at the moment. But with that, we are going to be moving on to another little question here. A question. And a lot of people are asking, is it too early to say an F-16 shot down a Russian Su-35? And it seems as though most everyone is saying yes. Some others are saying no. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so the question is it too early to say an F-16 shot down the Russian Su-35? The thing we've been debating here for the last 10 minutes or so, and it looks like 70% said yes, it is too early to say that because there's not enough evidence or really any evidence whatsoever, while 30% said no. And honestly, like I said earlier, it's a good theory. And honestly, if we knew that for a fact, it would make a much better title than what we have tonight. And it would make for a much better, I guess you could say, honest clickbait if we could put that in the title. But it's not corroborated. And to do that would be jumping the gun significantly. And not saying it's not true. It might be proven true later. But right now, there's no way to prove that. So to say otherwise, in my opinion, is jumping too early. So I'm definitely with the 70%. I would say we need to wait. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to agree. I believe that we would have to wait. There's just no way to actually be able to say that with absolute certainty, without a shadow of a doubt, that an F-16 shot it down. We just do not have enough evidence. And also, I saw someone bring in another fact, and I'll be covering this really quickly. Someone said, well, the Su-30s and the Su-35s have thrust vectoring, and the Su-27 doesn't. So that is clearly a major change. I hate to break it to people, but thrust vectoring is, in the general sense of most things, a gimmick. I don't mean to say that across the board, but at least as far as in an actual BVR air-to-air fight, it is a gimmick. Aircraft in the modern day usually engage in beyond visual range dogfights at near supersonic speeds, near to Mach 0.9 to Mach 0.93 at the beginning of contact. With that in mind, thrust vectoring is only activated on Su-30 and Su-35 airframes at speeds less than about 400 miles an hour, meaning that at most dogfighting speeds, which will be around 670 to 730 miles per hour, it is pretty much impossible to actually see thrust vectoring being used as an actual usable feature inside of those kinds of air combat scenarios. Now, there are scenarios where thrust vectoring could be used, for example, in the middle of an actual guns-only dogfight at very close distance, or maybe just a close-in dogfight of less than several miles, but in most practical terms in the modern day, thrust vectoring does not really provide that much of an actual value in modern-day dogfights at significant distances of around 70 to 100 miles, which is usually where most dogfights begin. There really is absolutely no value in thrust vectoring at all in those kinds of fights. And once again, I'm not saying that off of just hubris and just trying to say that without a shadow of a doubt. The Air Force even says that as well. That's why a lot of modern aircraft like the F-35 do not have in the U.S. Air Force any kind of thrust vectoring. Well, actually, let me go pull up the F-35. The F-35 does not have thrust vectoring. You can see that that is a fixed in-place nozzle. The F-22 had thrust vectoring, but that was generally to see if that was even worthwhile using. And after the F-22 has been tried out and tested, we're largely seeing that thrust vectoring has a very minimal impact in actual air combat scenarios. It's just not really going to be used too much. The Russians have an obsession with super maneuverability and the idea that the dogfight isn't truly dead, but the reality is that the dogfight is quite truly dead. The beyond visual range missile fight is the only kind of a fight in an airspace that happens these days. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news, and we have a good amount of it, and I want to make sure that before we get into the remainder of our news tonight, our location unknowns and the rest of the frontline news, that we get into a couple of questions that have been thrown in tonight to provide a bit of a segue. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so for our first one of the night, this one goes to Digifix, who's a longtime channel legend and puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Digifix, for that support and also helping to keep the channel running as well. And it's good to see you once again. He said, get you some pizza.
Hey, and I got to thank you for the support, and we are going to get ourselves some pizza, Digifix. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to eat. We wouldn't be able to keep this show running every single day. And I got to thank you massively once again, because you are an old guard and a channel legend. You've been here for years, and we're absolutely happy and elated to know that so many people have been with us for years. And not only that, some people go out of their way when they don't have to support this channel and help it to keep on rolling and running every single day. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And also, let's see here. Also, I see people bringing this up, and also it's obviously a pretty big thing happening right now, and people are distracted by it. We're not going to cover it right now. We might answer some questions on it later if the enforcer wants to jump into it in the question segment. But the LA situation is getting really out of hand right now. The people that are asking about it, we sadly are going to finish, or not sadly really, but we're going to finish our news coverage about Ukraine and Russia first, and then we might get to that later. But yeah, it's going down. Just to like confirm what some people were saying in the chat, it's really getting nasty. But jumping into our next one here, our next super chat, this one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. And we do appreciate that very much as well. A channel legend, truly. And they said, hating that chat check. And Slava Ukraine, and here I'm Slava.
I gotta thank you for the support, and I gotta say that I hate to hear that there's some kind of a chat check feature. Apparently, YouTube actually censors super chats. I didn't really know that until recently. Sometimes they won't allow people to type what they want into them anymore. But I do thank you massively for support, Marion Deemer, because you are a true old guard and channel legend. And folks like you help this channel to keep on running every single day. I got to thank you massively for that and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and Slava Ukrainian, Slava. And also, folks, I gotta say that we are going to see if we're going to cover anything about what's going on in LA. It's kind of straddling something that's just a major development, but something that's also really divisive and political. So we'll have to see if we even touch on that later. I can't really guarantee that we will, because it is really starting to become a heavily political kind of a thing. Earlier in the day, it looked like it was just some sort of a large incident of civil unrest, which, is just an incident in itself. Usually that's political, but something that we could kind of touch on. But considering now that there is a very polarized sort of an element building around it, either in support of the protesters or rioters or whatever you like to call them, versus what appears to be now federal forces, it seems as though this might be getting a little bit into the very political side of things. We might not be able to talk about it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news.
And our last one here goes to Gunfox, another channel legend, and he puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, as well, for that $20 support. And he said, Skylab 2, also SL2 and SLM-1, was the first crewed mission to Skylab and the first American orbital space station. And the mission was launched on an Apollo command and service module by a Saturn IB rocket on 5/25 of 1973. And a question from the chat.
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Gunfox61. And let's go take a look at the Skylab 2. The Skylab 2. Let's go take a gander at it. Here we are, Skylab 2. There it is. There's the Skylab. Again, we
Look at
actually...
that. A lab in the sky.
Skylab. It's very simple naming. it's very simple naming. But I gotta say, it is a very interesting kind of a program. Also, I gotta say, they were completely losing their minds with like the patches at this point. I don't know what that's supposed to be. This looks like someone was tripping on acid when they designed this thing. No joke. I don't know why. Dude, this honestly looks like a summer camp patch more so than anything.
Yeah, it really does. It's kind of a little bit odd.
There's a giant X on the logo. Legalized comedy, legalized. Well, I mean, what's he saying now? What's he saying? Something, man. He's like, legalized dissent, or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, beyond that, it's just a very interesting kind of a mission, that I will have to say. I actually don't know a lot about the Skylab beyond the fact that it existed, but it is pretty cool to know that it was the first orbital space station ever put up there by the US of A. I think it's incredibly neat. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we have?
All right, so the question from the chat is going to go to none other than, guess who? It goes to Rick, who said, which will fall first, the Russian military or Vladimir Putin?
I would say that if either is going to collapse first, I actually think the Russian military might suffer a collapse before Putin does. Because considering that the Russian army is materially deficient at this point, and also logistically bankrupt, I believe that we're probably going to see that they would end up collapsing before Putin himself collapses. And usually it's actually the government apparatuses surrounding the leader that will collapse first, before the leader himself actually collapses. One of those main key elements of power has to pretty much implode for the leader to be open to any kind of an overthrow or removal. And considering that that's usually historically how it's been done, I would have to say that the army is probably going to collapse before Putin collapses, considering it's one of the institutions that he maintains his power through. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I can hear at the moment right now. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight. And boy, howdy, folks, what a night it has been. I can see a lot of people are actually putting in some a little bit of news updates on what's going on in LA, and it's an interesting thing that I will
Well,
say.
I will say this. This isn't political at all. Excuse me, goodness. Going to get choked up talking about this one, too. I ought to choke you up a little bit. But it looks like the National Guard's been called in. About 2,000 National Guardsmen have been federalized, and they're going to Los Angeles. And they might be there now. I can't really tell. It's hard to follow it right now. But the Insurrection Act was not invoked, at least according to some reports. So that's a little bit fascinating. But the National Guardsmen are going there at the United States federal government's request. And also requested by California, I think, but I'm not very certain on that either. But the big news here, the big news about it is the U.S. Marines are on standby at Camp Pendleton, and they'll be mobilized. They're already on combat alert, high readiness right now. They're ready to go in to back up the National Guard. So that's the big one. This hasn't happened in about 40 years, by the way. That's why this is such a big event. The response hasn't happened in a very long time, many, many decades. So not commenting on the politics of it at all, but the deployments in themselves are kind of historic just because it's not very frequent.
When was the last time this was called up?
That was during those King riots, I think, back in like 1991 or something. It was a long time ago.
Huh, interesting. I actually didn't know it was called up. Well, actually, it would make sense that it was called up back then because if I remember correctly, the entire city of LA was overrun and most of it just entered a state of lawlessness for a while, and that's why they had to call them in. But still, interesting to hear nonetheless. And we actually probably won't be talking about it too much here on the channel because I can tell, at least from the responses that we're getting in the live chat at the moment, some people might not be able to really handle us talking about it at all because they're either going to get irate that we're talking about it or they're going to start pretty much just trying to cause fights in the chat to feel like they're getting one up on other people like we're currently in LA right now. So we're going to be moving on from that and on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight, and we were able to hear inside of our location unknown some significant developments. First, we were able to see the Ukrainians using a VZ-59, which is actually a Czech-made machine gun from the times of the Eastern Bloc, or the Warsaw Pact. Pretty little interesting machine gun. It actually is very weird. Honestly, everything that the Czechs made during that period was weird. But here's what it actually looks like on its own. And the thing's just bizarre. It's kind of like a PKP, but everything was ultra simplified on it to the point that it doesn't really look like a machine gun, does it? It kind of looks like one of those pretend guns that you give, for kids to go play cowboys and Indians and stuff, you know? Like, it looks weird. And that's not even the weirdest thing they made. I believe they also made the VZ-58. And let me check that. Oh, yeah, this! Like, the rip-off AK. This is the AK Light. These things are just bizarre because they actually don't have a dust cover, Matthew. You wouldn't believe it. The whole bolt on this thing is just exposed. I want to see if I can find you a video of this thing firing. Let me see if I can find one. Because it's just so bizarre. Like, oh yeah, here we go. So when the bolt pulls back, there's no dust cover over the top. The whole thing just opens up.
Interesting. I don't like that.
Honestly, man, it's pretty wonky. I actually find it just interesting for the mechanical side of things, but would I ever want to use one of these things? Absolutely not. They look terrible. But moving on from that and on out of that little interesting bit about the Ukrainians using a Czech VZ-59, we also got to see that the Ukrainians are starting to use a significant amount of anti-drone netting. Originally laughed at by everyone, the Ukrainians have actually started to understand, at least at this point in the war, that Ukrainian drone netting is incredibly important in stopping Russian drones from impacting Ukrainian positions and causing a large amount of damage either to the logistical structures or the frontline troops at the actual front. For this reason, we've started to see that anti-drone netting is being produced in mass and being deployed in incredibly large numbers to be able to protect the Ukrainian supply lines a couple of miles back from the active front. Moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report, which was quite good today, as one Bobcat was lost. Hey!
Yeah, one Bobcat, let's go. That's what I'm talking about, Jack. I'm king of some more. Thank you.
And I gotta say, Pretty impressive stuff right here. Pretty impressive stuff. And Ms. Disa, the keeper of the record, said 300 drones is a new highest daily loss. Prior was 264 on May 26th of 2025, meaning that we have a new record. Helicopters in MI-8 at the Russian airfield in Bryansk, 52 APCs. This is the 16th highest loss, tied with 4 other days, and 166 vehicles destroyed is the 14th highest day, tied with 2 others. And the losses were quite good today. We were able to see that 1,120 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. We were also able to see 52 APCs, 166 supply trucks, 15 main battle tanks, 56 artillery pieces, 300 drones, 4 MLRSs, 1 helicopter, 37 cruise missiles, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. Today was actually a pretty good day, all in all, and it's one of the few times that we've seen a heavier amount of armored losses, at least over the past few months. Moving on from that, though, and into the remainder of our news throughout the rest of the front, we have had plenty. But before we get into that, I do have to say really quickly, folks, a little bit of something, because I can see that some people, they get on the hill and they have to die on it. And I'm gonna have to tell y'all that the hills that people are trying to die on here really aren't ones worth dying on really quickly. Okay, one, this channel is a world news channel. We do not get into domestic politics. I also have to let y'all know that we do not allow people by channel rules to come into the channel and start grandstanding on politics. I do understand that a lot of people have heard that there is a riot going on in LA and there's been some kind of a significant federal response, but at the exact same time, I also have to point out that we are not here to talk about domestic political issues. I do understand that there are 2 sides to this argument, but at the same time, that is not an argument that we are going to be getting involved in, either Matthew and me on the channel, or anyone in the chat. Anyone in the chat who is attempting to engage in that sort of thing and start creating fights inside of the chat due to domestic political issues will most likely be removed from the chat if that continues. It's not most likely, that's a guarantee. So please make sure to refrain from politics, folks, because we are here talking about foreign policy and world news issues. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the rest of our frontline news, specifically in Kupiansk, as we were able to see the Ukrainians hitting an APC and sending that thing sky high. And a boosh, and they got it then! Blew the thing to pieces.
Good.
Man, absolutely impressive right there. Moving on from that and on to our other clip that we got from the Kupiansk area, we also got to see a Switchblade 600 hitting some Russian targets within this area. Take a little gander.
Those are actually kind of rare these days, and also super expensive. That was the shortest clip ever, dude. They gave us like 2 seconds to look at that.
Yeah, man, they gave like 3 seconds, maybe 2, maybe. We can see them hitting a Buke, though, right there.
I didn't know we were even sending Switchblade 600 still. Let's see here. Switchblade 600 cost. Yeah, 58,000 a piece. Those things are crazy expensive. Like just totally unsustainable for a country like Ukraine to keep those up. So yeah, that's rare to see one of those used.
I'll be honest, it really is cost ineffective for anyone, because it's like if you can have a drone that costs like $500 that can do that job versus 58,000, it's like it makes a lot more sense to just go with a $500 drone because it's actually cost effective in the long run. So I don't really know what it is, man, with like creating a drone. It's like 58 grand. It's like, it's a drone. It's like, and if the Ukrainians are able to make them at $500, we ought to see about making ours as cheap as possible and in a large volume, instead of acting like it's some sort of a specialized artisanal thing with modern warfare. That's just ridiculous. But
don't you want precision machined and finely crafted weapons of disposable warfare? Like, why wouldn't you want a finely machined metal drone made out of the finest carbon fiber around to, simply dispose of after one hit? Why wouldn't you want that?
Because it makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense. It's like,
why would you use such expensive rare materials in something that's literally made to explode? It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's one thing if it was a reusable drone, but it's a one-time disposable drone. It's like, why should that be made out of the finest parts at 58 grand? It literally is only going to be used once. So make it as cheap as it can possibly be made, and then just field them in mass like the Ukrainians are doing. That makes way more sense than what we're doing with the Switchblades currently. We did get to see, however, that some Russian vehicles were destroyed near to the area of Chasiv Yar by the Rarog Ragi unit. And we can see here the town of Chasiv Yar, of course, still embroiled in heavy battles and fighting at the moment. And the Ukrainians are about to start clearing out at least a couple of the Russians that are found within these ruins. And we see a Ukrainian flag flying over one of the destroyed tanks here in the city. We see them continuing to fly over, and soon we're about to get to the action. And here it is. This appears to be a Russian BTR, possibly. I actually can't tell what that thing was, but they did hit it. We see them continuing to hit a multitude of Russian vehicles throughout the area. Oh, and they hit that one. No suspension in this thing.
Look at it. What is that thing on top of a coke cage?
It looks like, I can't even tell what kind of a vehicle that is underneath, but it's about to get blasted.
Oh no, that's a terrible thing. Look at this.
Man.
White and black smoke.
Dude, the thing's charbroiling, man. It looks like the Russians have elected a new pope. But that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and on into our next clip down near Kurtamivka, we also got to see the famous Fighting 93rd, which we haven't gotten a lot of clips from recently, actually hitting Russian logistics with their drones as well. And we see them hitting this Russian vehicle, and then moving on into the next one.
Jack, look, you might want to be careful going down that road. I mean, it's not exactly what you call safe.
What do you mean, Jack? Oh, I thought you liked him. What do you mean you don't like him? I bought a Tesla. Now everyone hates me. You know something, Jack? You know, like buying a Tesla is like the worst kind of investment. Back a couple of years ago, everyone who was a Republican would hate you. Now it was a Democrat. Now it's just everyone. Like, there's no difference. Everyone hates you. Like, it's like, you have a Tesla, you're an enemy of the state, apparently. What's going on, Jack?
Look, Jack, haven't you heard about a Tesla tower? I mean, shoots out electricity everywhere. You gotta be careful. I mean, look out for it. I mean, Tesla tower.
Look, Jack, I bought a Tesla to buy a car. I didn't buy a political ideology to go with it, Jack. Just being honest with you.
Well, I went to the Cascades with a Tesla S. But anyways, we can see they're continuing to hit Russian vehicles in the area. So you just absolutely lost it there for like a minute. And moving on from that clip and on into our next one further down the line at Touretsk, we also got to see the Ukrainians throwing in an anti-tank mine as a satchel charge. Here they come. And there goes the mines. I like how they always just gently toss them in, like, here you go. It's like, oh, and here it comes, oh, and they're gone.
Oh, man. You know what the Russians said after the Ukrainian threw it in there?
What?
This mines.
Man, I guess you could say he was mining the gap. Oh, bro, that's a good one.
Oh, man, mining the gap. I tell you what, they got to watch that gap.
Man, I got to tell you, man. Moving on from that and down there at Shalene, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting Russian positions in Pokrovsk in the 36th Marines, I believe, if I'm correct. It's actually the 38th Marines Brigade. And I just so sad, he said, have you considered a low-pass filter so you don't blow our eardrums out suddenly?
Look, Jack, I gotta be honest with you. I don't care about your eardrums. Your eardrums hearing, it's not service-related. Hearing injuries.
Look, the workers, they need better hearing protection.
Look, you gotta understand that when you hear about what's going on, are you okay? Are you okay, Jack? Are you doing all right?
Could I interest you into some 3M foam earplugs?
No, no, you can't.
Also, by the way, the voice is supposed to be obnoxious. I think people are missing the point. It's supposed to be obnoxious. It is obnoxious.
Yeah. Man, it's it's supposed to be obnoxious. That's kind of the whole point of that voice. If you're annoyed by it, it's kind of doing its job. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see the Ukrainians push the Russians back a little bit today. They were able to liberate a village to the southeast of the city of Pokrovsk, actually the southwest of the city of Pokrovsk, called Southwest Airlines. The way they'd be clearing that out and getting rid of those second bags. Meanwhile, we also get to see the Russian forces also getting hit by the Blank Sky unit of the 3rd Operational Brigade Spartan. We can see them just hitting the Russian forces down there. Look at them go.
Just hammering them. No tree line is safe out in the field.
You know what? I think, Matthew, I think a lot of other people are going to like this voice because this is one that is not annoying to a lot of people. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I get no respect around here. Oh, man. I went down to a Tesla dealership a couple of years ago. I bought myself a Tesla. Oh, man. First the liberals liked me. Oh, man. And then they started hating me a couple of years later. Then the Republicans liked me. Oh, man. And they liked me real good for like a couple of months. Oh, man, I'm telling you. And now everyone hates me. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. I get no respect around here.
You know, I got a novel idea. How about when you buy your car, how about you buy it for the merits of the car? Like, you know, if it's got a good engine, if it's got a good handling, if it's got a good look, good styling to it or something, instead of buying a car because it matches your political ideology. Like, I've never really understood that.
Man, I always liked it, man, when all those, like, I'm not gonna lie, folks, people who buy Teslas are suckers, like, because the build quality on all of them is pretty low, in my opinion. Like it's not my opinion, you can just look at them, the build quality's low. And back a couple of years ago, it was left-leaning people who were buying them. They're going, oh, this is a nice car because it's eco-friendly. And then recently, it was Republicans buying them because this is a real American car. And now everyone hates them, like, because now it really doesn't fall within either political group because the guy has pretty much made himself an enemy of everyone. So it's like now if you own a Tesla, everyone hates you. Like it's just like no political affiliation likes you anymore, and you pretty much got suckered into buying a subpar car that had a political message attached to it of differing kinds depending on the spokesperson for the whole company. It's like why don't people just buy the car? And also, why in the world do companies these days feel like they have to have a political message and get into that? Why not just be in the business of selling cars and really focus on the quality of your car? You know what I mean? Like, I wish that they would go back to that kind of a selling point, that we actually sell nice, good cars instead of, if you buy this car, you're this political party or that one. You know, that's what I think.
Man, every CEO these days is like, buy my car, you're one of us.
Yeah, there has to be a message here. How are people supposed to buy a car without their politics? It's like, do they just buy them like they used to?
But what about the culture? The culture.
We have to make everything identity-based. We have to.
Like the culture? Bro, what about the culture of that glue you're using to glue the body panels on? Like, where's the culture in that?
Bro, they said made in America, and then they made the worst kind of product possibly made in America. It's like, this is the worst argument for made in America.
The culture. It's just terrible. Like, it's stupidity what we've come down to these days. It's really dumb. It's tribalism. It's just I can't stand identity politics. I'm sorry if some people take that offensively, but I can't stand it. It's like it tells people to shut their brains off and go with the herd, which is the worst way to live your life anywhere in the world, any country you live in. Terrible.
I mean, yeah, you know, my Nikes are made out of like plastic and shit, but you know, at least it's my political brand. It's like, that is so stupid. Like, people, like, honestly, folks like that are mouth breathers or something. They don't have any sense. Because I don't know how you can just get, like, conned into buying stuff because it aligns with, like, their company is trying to make a whole identity revolving around, like, a political idea. It makes no sense. It doesn't ever make any sense. I don't buy like that. I'm not a clown. I don't go and buy off of political ideologies. I go and buy off of the quality of the product. So if your products are good, I'm going to buy them. If they're not good, I'm not going to buy them. So moving on from that and on down to Robotyne, we also get to see Russian forces getting hit down here. And man, you know what was crazy, man, is that last night people were asking for more voices, and then we do like a voice, and then there's people coming out of the woodworks complaining about them again. It's always crazy like that. When we don't do them, there's loads of people who want them. And then when we do them, I never see anyone saying they actually appreciate the voices. Like, maybe like 10 or 12 people, and then there's like 50 of them that come out and say they hate it. It's like, well, I guess we'll just go back to not doing them again. But we can see here.
I don't know. Like, to me, it seems like the voices are like more of a negative thing to me. Like, a lot of people complain. Honestly, I'll say this. I do the voices too from time to time. Sometimes it does get obnoxious. I'm not going to lie. Like, some people do have a point about that. I do them mainly these days whenever we're getting like hyped for a fundraiser or something. But outside of that, I pretty much just like have pretty much avoided doing the voices since then.
Yeah, honestly, like and whenever we try and bring back the voices, it's just nothing but that. It's a bunch of people who are stuck up that then get pissed off that we're having a little bit of a laugh. And then they, what the hell is this? What are you doing in the middle of my nose? And it's like, okay, well, we'll just stop doing that then. Thanks to the Killjoys. But moving on from that and down to Melitopol and near to Yakimivka, we did get to hear that a Russian train was hit with heavy damage today. According to the Defense Forces South, they hit a locomotive with a column of enemy equipment, and the enemy's losses mounted to 13 tanks and more than 100 units of armored and auto equipment. It sounds crazy until the Russian military bloggers actually backed it up. And this was what the Russian military bloggers said today. Another unthinkable F-up by our special services. There is no point in remaining silent anymore. The enemy destroyed a locomotive with tanks and dozens of armored vehicles. At some point, hatches through which grain is poured began to fly off from railway containers, such as hoppers, grain trucks, while they were moving. It was through them that drones flew out and attacked the equipment that was located on the platform cars. What genius came up with the idea of combining a train of equipment with grain trucks is a mystery, as well as how the SBU managed to hide drones there is also unknown. But the result was this. The first blow was delivered to the locomotive, after which the train began to lose speed and was stopped. The enemy destroyed most of our equipment without hindrance. Operation Spiderweb 2.0. And someone must answer for this, and it will be the Russian army that will answer for this by not getting any of those tanks or APCs on the front when they needed them. Yippee! But anyways, we do also have some information. The reports say Putin is quietly labeling China as enemies as they praise the public alliance that they have. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And Matthew, what kind of thoughts have they been putting in, and what kind of prayers are they putting in as well? And also, what are you thinking about it?
Okay, so it says reports say Putin is quietly labeling China as enemies as they praise the public alliance, the no limits partnership between China and Russia. And what are your thoughts? 41% said China will support Russia anyways because it's really no limits. They have no limits at all. While 31% said China will slowly end Russia's support as a result of this report that came out today, and 18% said China will remain skeptical. And one thing I think people are misunderstanding a little bit about the China-Russia relationship is they hate each other, like silently. It's more of a sneaky way of hating each other. It's not like the India-Pakistan way of hating each other, where they're literally at each other's throats in the public. It's more of like a cunning way. Putin knows how to manipulate, and he's a lunatic narcissist. Xi Jinping, I don't know if he falls in the same category. He's more just really cunning, and he's also very intelligent. So between those two, they are each other's worst enemies, even though they claim to be friends. They've never trusted each other, never will, and never have. And there's no confusion about that amongst the two. They know that, and they play a manipulation game to extract as much exploitation they can from each other. So I don't think there's any trust there to really deteriorate. So they're supporting each other out of mutual interest, and that's solely it. The moment that ends, the moment that they'll become bitter enemies in the public once again. So I'm kind of with the 18% actually. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's probably going to go back to the way it used to be, the way it was pretty much throughout all of their history, where they hate each other. Because them being friends, unlikely. They've wanted to kill each other for decades, and, well, really centuries, honestly. And I think it's going to get right back to it, because this is more so an alliance of convenience more than it is one of actual underlying mutual interest. So that's what I would have to say. I would have to agree with Matthew on that, in the 18%, that it's most likely going to go back to slaughter and anger. But moving on from that and on into the rest of our news, we also were able to see the Russians getting slammed by hammers being dropped by MiG-29s today near to Kherson. And oh, look, is that a line cook taking a break from a restaurant? Because he's kind of standing like one.
Kind of is standing like one. What is he doing?
Man, he was kind of
He's got all the work at the Waffle House, the Bliet House, Bliet.
Oh, he's going back inside. He has to cook. He's not cooking waffles, though. But we can see the MiG-29 dropping the hammers. And here comes the hits. Oh my goodness. Actually, that was quite impressive.
Crap. That is severe.
And we can see
also, by the way, I see people commenting about the poll about China and Russia. The China and Russia do hate the West more than each other. I think that's the only thing holding them together at this point is their common hatred of the West. Because, obviously hatred pushes people together. Like it creates alliances that would typically not exist otherwise when you have a common enemy to hate. That is something that's obviously a huge motivator to that. So like we said, it's an alliance of convenience because the West is the big bad boogeyman, and right now it's not Russia's the big bad boogeyman or China, even though they're silently willing to take each other's land. Like China wants to take Russia's land if they could get away with it, and Russia would love to exploit the hell out of China as unfairly as possible. So it's just a toxic relationship between those two, just so toxic.
Man, narcissistic, really. But moving on from that, it is now time for us to get up to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1,200 of the news. And this one's actually a little lengthy tonight, so without further ado, here's the speech. Peach!
Дорогі українці, українки, зараз в Харкові надають допомогу людям, які були поранені російськими бомбами. Це був жорстокий удар по місту просто посеред дня. І фактично всю цю добу вони б'ють по нашому місту Харків. Минулої ночі по Харкову був масований удар дронів, тепер авіабомби, десятки людей за добу постраждали. На жаль, є загиблі. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. І хто б там що не казав, це російські удари не у відповідь, а на знищення, цілковитого знищення життя. Вони хочуть цього. І в абсолютно всіх містах, селах, на окупованій території справді видно, що означає прихід Росії. Єдине, про що піклуються окупанти, це про військову інфраструктуру та про свою можливість вивести з України все цінне. За більш ніж 11 років війни Росії проти нас, проти України, принесли вони на нашу землю нове, тільки одне. І це дійсно найбільш поширений російський продукт – руїни та смерті. Ми маємо цьому і надалі протидіяти. Я дякую всім в світі, хто допомагає, хто робить це. Не можна послаблювати жодну форму тиску на Росію. Ані ті формати, що вже застосовані, ані ті способи тиску, що готуються. Росіяни готуються продовжувати війну, ігнорують всі мирні пропозиції. Вони повинні за це відповідати. Ми працюємо для того, щоб збільшити українське ППО. Дуже потрібні позитивні сигнали від Сполучених Штатів Америки. Конкретні сигнали щодо ППО. Ми досі чекаємо відповідь на пропозицію купити системи, які можуть допомогти. Конкретні сигнали, а не слова. Я хочу подякувати європейським країнам за постачання. Ми маємо досягти результатів і у спільному виробництві систем ППО. Виробництві ракет до них. Це точно необхідно для всієї нашої Європи. Лише час відділяє від цього результату. І головне, щоб цей час скорочувався. Ще одне. Сьогодні доповідали міністр оборони України Умєров, главком Сирський щодо дій наших хлопців на передовій передусім. Є за що подякувати. Наші воїни цього тижня успішно знищили позиції росіян, саме ті позиції, з яких били по Україні, по наших громадах, по наших людях. Днями були знищені 3 установки. «Іскандер» – це було знищення просто вбивць. Також є збиття російського військового літака Су-35 та пошкодження їхніх військових вертольотів. Є і нові ураження російської військової логістики. Аеродроми. Це допомагає нашому захисту. Кожне ускладнення для Росії має значення для нас. Ми свідомі того, що росіяни пробують зараз показати, наче вони не піддаються жодному тиску. Але дуже важливо, щоб світ розумів, так само, як тиск примусив Росію зайти в переговорний процес. Тиск може примусити Росію стати реалістом в процесі перемовин. Саме внаслідок тиску це можливо. І передусім санкції на російську нафту, на тих, хто з Росією досі торгує. Росія повинні закінчити цю війну, яку вона почала. Треба дотиснути їх до цього. Дякую кожному нашому партнеру, всім лідерам, усім країнам, які саме в цьому нам допомагають, в нових обмеженнях Росії, в нових санкціях. Будь ласка, не мовчіть про те, що реально відбувається. Давайте разом працювати на реальний результат дипломатії. Не на слова, на мир. Попереду саміти Південно-Східної Європи, групи Семи, саміт НАТО, інші міжнародні події. Все це може допомогти, має допомогти порятунку життів і наближенню миру. Хай так і буде. Слава Україні!
Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1,200 of the news from around the world, although it's pretty much all about Ukraine today. And it is time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, was it a big night again. We had a peak viewership here tonight of 10.3 thousand people. Honestly, that's way better than I thought we were going to do, actually. And not only that, we've had 65,000 people watch this stream so far. And I've got to say, folks, we are entirely honored and appreciative to have had so many of y'all here tonight. I do have to say, though, just want to make this a little bit clear, we're not going to be talking what's going on in LA tonight. It seems that is a very political kind of a thing, so we're going to be largely avoiding that. But we are going to be continuing on with chit-chatting with whatever y'all want to talk about, as long as it isn't political or religious. And it seems that we have a lot of questions already lined up that meet those criteria to be able to chit-chat with all of y'all about tonight. And boy, howdy, folks, do we love this segment. We love it. And so, Matthew, please take it away. What do we got?
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the night. Some say the most anticipated part of the stream. Some call it the best part of the stream. Some say there's nothing like it anywhere else in the world in any other stream because this is the best stream. Some people say that, but I don't really know who's saying that, but I can tell you that a lot of people are saying it, and I'm hearing it from a lot of people. I can assure you. So jumping into our first super chat here, this one goes to, I don't know what I'm doing, but they really do know what they're doing because they're here on this channel and they're throwing in a $50 support. Thank you very much, Mr. I don't know what I'm doing for that support. And I do not see a comment attached to it, sadly, so nothing to address, but thank you very much once again for helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I don't know what I'm doing. Hey! I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running because it is folks like you who make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And I got to say that that is an incredibly amazing thing that you're throwing in support like that. You didn't throw in a comment, but hey, I got to thank you greatly for it. And you know what? I'm going to do a little rabbit hole here. A little rabbit hole. You know, something that's interesting here about the city of LA. This is actually something interesting. We're not talking about what's going on there right now. But this is actually something interesting about the city of LA. Is that it actually had about this size since about the 1930s. It's been like this for about 90 years. Of course, it's grown out a good bit since then. But the general road structures and things were here from the 30s on. And what's interesting about the city is that it really was one of the first that actually brought on car culture to an extreme. Car culture these days is a very common thing in America, and pretty much infrastructure is built solely around the car instead of being built as a diversified public transportation infrastructure. But LA was actually the first city in America to do such a thing. They actually created these things called pedestrian tunnels. Pretty much the idea was that, let's see, pedestrian tunnels. Tunnel LA. Let me go get these.
You know, I used to live in LA.
Oh, yeah, in GTA?
No, Lower Alabama.
Oh, I forgot about that joke. That's a good one. But beyond that, these are the LA tunnels. They look like slums because they are. But basically, the idea was that back in the day, when cars were starting to become a thing, and people have been driving like idiots since the dawn of time, and there were a lot of children getting killed in auto accidents in LA during that period, that automotive manufacturers and motor clubs banded together to pretty much make it seem like it was the pedestrians' fault instead of the driver's fault that these fatalities were happening. So pretty much, it created what we see today and kind of live in as America, that the roads are for cars, not for people. People need to stay off of the roads unless if they are in a car. And so that actually started here in LA. And these pedestrian tunnels were an attempt to try and generally create that as an actual living thing. So pedestrians really didn't even get to see sunlight anymore. They only really got to see the underground tunnels like these. Really stupid, honestly. I really actually think it's like now that I've learned a lot more about how America shifted from being pretty much normal like every other country with how people are actually able to walk around the streets to now there is like no infrastructure to walk around the streets and you pretty much have to be in a car to get anywhere. I actually think that was a massive mistake back then, that started to really kick off in the 30s. And still pretty much has existed as what is the base model for the modern day US, because it is absolutely depressing that in most places, especially around Birmingham, there really is actually no way to get out and just walk around because everything is built around the car. So to get anywhere or do anything, you pretty much have to have a car. It's really kind of goofy, actually. But anyways, I hope that was an interesting rabbit hole for y'all. And with that, and I also thank you for the support. I don't know what I'm doing. I tried to throw in a rabbit hole there to add a little bit of extra value to your super chat. So a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, I know a place in Los Angeles that was actually pretty good for modifying cars. I'm not sure if anybody else has heard of it. Have you heard of it?
No, actually, you didn't even mention it. Yeah, I don't know.
It's I think it's in might be near like Central, maybe it might be near Beverly Hills. I can't remember the exact location. I'll have to go back and look at the map, but it's Los Santos Customs. Like, have you heard of it?
Oh my God. Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
I'm gonna move on to the next one. The next one here goes to Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $50 donation. And Hokey is, of course, an extremely long-time channel legend. And thank you very much, Hokey, for the 50 and helping to save me from that terrible joke. But Hokey said 20 seconds of David Attenborough, please, and you pick the topic.
And I have to greatly thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, the incredible Enforcer channel would not be possible. And if we were to talk about something in particular in the David Attenborough voice, we would of course have to talk about the great marmot. Marmots are an incredible creature, endemic to the United States and most of North America. These creatures are largely giant squirrels, and survive and persist on nothing but vegetarian diets. But most importantly, what is most interesting about the marmot is this painting that was made by a man named Jacopo Ligozzi, his name sounding kind of like Guzzi, and it makes it something a little bit funny. But nevertheless, this was the first painting in all of Europe of the incredible species named the marmot. And these animals here have persisted in the minds of a community called the Lee Spring Army for years now, as many have found this creature to be of great worth, but most likely the most important feature of the marmot is the bastardization that Jacopo Ligozzi made in his original painting from 1605. Nevertheless,
You know, it's really fascinating because what people don't understand about these marmots is if you hit it with a car, at least at 20, it becomes really good venison. I don't know if you know.
I believe, if I was to remember that story correctly, a man called RFK Jr. ran over a marmot near to Central Park, propped it up on top of a car, and then shot it 5 times to make it look like it had been killed in a mafia hit. It was a great question
Yeah,
throughout
excuse
the...
me. I think you missed a part. You missed a step. Open the trunk and put it in the trunk and let it simmer.
And the smell was quite nasty, according to many passers-by in the area. Nevertheless, the marmot is a creature that will live within the hearts and minds of all people in the Lee Spring Army from here well on into the future. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I thank you once again for that massive support, Hokey Redneck, and allowing me to do a voice that is actually a crowd pleaser. Many people greatly enjoy the David Attenborough voice, among many others that we have not done recently, including the Sam Elliott voice, which is also a great attraction of the stream. But nevertheless, a massive thanks to you all once again, and if you would like to hear this voice once more, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We do not do this voice often, and we only do it on request. But if you would like to hear more of a rip-off David Attenborough, you can of course either support the channel and request it, or you can subscribe and request it then, and maybe we will do it a little bit more. But nevertheless, a big thanks to you once again. And with that,
Somebody said, "How long did you practice that voice, Enforcer Man? That was good." Honestly, I don't know why I was naturally good at that one. I think because my voice naturally kind of has like a bit of a wobble to it. Actually, believe it or not, like I actually stabilize my voice a little bit when I talk. I don't know why, but for the last like 2 years, whenever I go to speak, it feels like I'm about to cough. Like I don't know what caused that. I don't know if it was the Wuhan whirlybird that gave me that. I'm not sure if it was from that or not. Because I actually got that same little symptom there around the same time I recovered from that whirlybird. So I don't know what caused it, but I always kind of have that naturally now. So I kind of just like fell into it. It's like a natural impression these days.
What's interesting is that I actually didn't have to try hard to do the Attenborough voice much either. Some of the voices come really easy, and also the Sam Elliott voice comes really easy. Let me do that one real quick. I kind of got to get closer to the mic because I have to get it quiet to do it. Have you ever had the delicious taste of Bush's bacon? I actually haven't done that one in a while. I feel like that needs some practice, but it wasn't that hard to do the first time. That time, though, I was like, I don't know if I'm really getting that one down well, because there's a certain tempo tempo is a very important thing on doing voices. You have to kind of get down, like, their rhythm of how they speak to be able to do it properly, and I think I'm missing it a little bit on Sam Elliott. It wasn't, like, the cylinders were firing, but it wasn't firing on all cylinders there. Edinburgh is very easy, though, because he has a very specific way of talking with a specific kind of cadence.
And so, as long as you have his general sound of voice down, you can easily start to imitate his exact elocutions and the way that he speaks, much like this right here.
Which is not at all how I speak normally. So, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we have right now. And I got to thank you, Hokey Redneck, for supporting the channel, helping it to keep on running, and getting more than what you requested of Attenborough. I think I did that for about a couple of minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes, and you only asked for 20 seconds. So that is bang for the buck right there. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Andrew Barbaro, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you, Andrew, for being one of the largest super chatters of the night. And we do appreciate it very much. And of course, you've been supporting us very consistently recently. And we do appreciate that. You're helping to keep the channel running and the reports flowing. And he said, gentlemen, good day and good evening and good night. And good night. He said, LSA forever, and take one from the chat.
And is that the thing from that movie that Jim Carrey was in? I forgot the name of it, where he was like, good morning, good evening, and good night. And it was filmed in Seaside, Florida. I think that's it.
I remember that one.
Really, I think it's called The Truman Show. We never got to watch it. We never really.
And I know that show. I just didn't know it was filmed in Florida.
Yeah, it was actually filmed in Seaside. Let me go pull up. Oh yeah, look, they actually have it right here. The Truman Show house. Yeah, that actually is the house. Like, that's crazy. Let's see if they actually have a picture from the movie. They don't. So sadly they don't. But the whole thing was actually filmed in Seaside. Truman Show town. Let me see if they show the town in the movie in any way. Dang, dude. Is there any pictures from the movie? Oh, well, here's actually a picture from the movie. There he is, and he's walking down one of the streets in Seaside, actually.
I never knew that. Also, by the way, if you aren't familiar with this area, this is an extremely nice place to go to the beach. Like, honestly, probably the nicest beaches in Florida are this little 30A section of highway here where Seaside is. It's a little pricey, but it's extremely nice, though. Oh, look, they even have a Truman House thing. I never even knew what that meant when we went there.
Yeah, I didn't know what it meant either because we passed it, and we weren't really, we weren't raised in a way where we really had, the liberty to watch many movies, really. There's I won't go into all the details on that, but we never really got to watch anything growing up. I've never watched the Truman Show movie. I've never watched it. So I've seen a summary of it on YouTube before, and one day I hope to actually get to watch the whole thing, because it's a really interesting kind of a movie, at least from what I've heard, and it's a big classic here in the United States. But this is the town that it was filmed in right here, and it still looks the same way it did in the Truman Show movie, even still to this day. We've been here before, and I'd honestly have to say that this area of beach, kind of from Miramar Beach on down towards Rosemary Beach, is probably the best beaches in Florida, from what I could tell. I actually say that they are a lot better than the West Palm Beach and Miami beaches by a good long shot, really, at least from my personal opinion. And, of course, they can be up to people's tastes. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I got to thank you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel impossible. We wouldn't be able to keep it on running. But why the hell do we even get on into talking about the Truman Show, man? I just completely forgot why we even got into that rabbit hole.
I don't even know why, to be honest with you.
I don't even know either. And then someone said, just say your report. No, actually, it's the opposite. We
We're
weren't.
middle class.
Yeah, we were like the middle class or the upper middle class. Sometimes being raised like that isn't the greatest thing. Just to put it that way. We're not going to get into a lot of details on that. But it's not really the greatest thing sometimes because looks can be deceiving. Anyways, with that, hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question sponsored by Mr. Andrew Barbaro is going to go to none other than, let's see here, scrolling through to check. Let's see. This one goes to Coder for Liberty, who said Spiderweb 2.0 or not enough info to cover yet and say that with certainty. What would you say?
And I would say it sounds like Spiderweb 2.0, and considering that we got confirmation from both the Ukrainian and Russian side of the attack, it does sound that it was Spiderweb 2.0 to a T. The drones popped out of places that they shouldn't have been, and then went on to attack a large amount of equipment and vehicles. So it sounds to me that it was definitely, without a doubt, Spiderweb 2.0, but on a smaller scale and particularly targeting a specific train. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Wonton, you were right. We were addressing the good evening, the good morning, good evening, and good night statement that Andrew Barbaro made, and I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot. But beyond that, I do thank you, Andrew Barbaro, for sponsoring at live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for supporting this channel and making this thing a reality for us to be able to run each and every single day, day in and day out, day after day, night after night, week after week, month after month, and year after year. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Steve T. And Steve put in a 20, and thank you very much, Steve, for that $20 support and also helping keep us running. He said, why are fuel depots, refineries, and storage tanks not overflown with thermite? It would seem to be more efficient than one tank or building, and thermite seems to have gone. And keep up the good work.
I would, and thank you for the support, and I'm not really sure why that isn't the case. It may just be that being able to deliver effectively thermite onto the top of those facilities and enough of it to be able to burn through the tanks may actually be somewhat difficult. I'm not entirely sure. It's a great question, but I also believe that thermite has to be activated in a specific kind of a way, if I'm correct. So it may be a little bit more difficult than we would originally believe, but I'm not really an expert on explosives or thermite or anything like that. There are channel members here who are experts in that sort of a thing. Unfortunately, I'd have to defer to their experience, and I wouldn't really be able to give an answer easily here on stream as to why they are not doing that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I got to thank you once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And David Little, what are you talking about? You're literally in the chat. No one's done anything to you. So I don't know. I don't know what you're saying right there. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Noah Atter, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Noah, as well, for supporting the channel and also helping keep us running. And Noah said, is it just me, or does it seem like a dumb decision by Russia to base the SU-30, 33, 34, and 35 on the SU-27, meaning no spare parts if they were all produced in the same plant as the SU-27, which is terrible for logistics?
Actually, it's actually pretty good for the logistics to actually use a unified kind of an airframe. It's what's called standardization, which is an incredibly important thing in modern industrialized warfare. You generally do not want a wide variety of specialized airframes. You generally kind of want one aircraft to do the job. That's why the U.S. Air Force in prior decades has started to really emphasize, really the Western world has emphasized, the multi-role fighter or the multi-role jet. That's really what it's called, is the multi-role jet, because the multi-role jet is able to do air-to-air, air-to-ground, and even multiple other different kinds of missions as easily and effectively as any other kind of aircraft, and really without having to have a completely different specialized aircraft to do it. It actually makes sense for the modern Russian Federation, which is cash-strapped, to pretty much make all of their aircraft variants of the Su-27 airframe, because the Su-27 airframe was the best one that they had at that point so far when the Soviet Union collapsed. And not only that, having them all using standardized parts makes logistics a lot easier because they all require the same logistics parts stream, and also it makes production a lot easier, and it also makes costs a lot lower because you're able to produce them on an economy of scale. So generally, it actually is a smarter decision to do something like that than not. But as far as also the lack of large production facilities that produce the parts for the Su-27 airframes, that is also another Achilles heel of that sort of a system. There's a drawback to it, because while it makes the logistics a lot easier, it also makes it a lot easier for foreign force to be able to hit and destroy your spare parts production. So that is actually a pretty good point there, but still, there are a lot of logistical and cost benefits that kind of outweigh the vulnerabilities, to put it that way. Because if you look at the U.S. Air Force, and let me show this really quickly. If you look at the U.S. Air Force's equipment or aircraft, which we'll go to right here, you can see that we are retiring the A-10s. We're in the process of doing that. They'll eventually be retired. But we also have the Super Tucanos, which are pretty niche at the moment. We really don't have a big room for them. But let me move on down really quickly to the actual combat aircraft, wherever those may be. So you can see right here, we have a whole slew of F-15s of different variants and types that are able to do some slightly different things, or they're just better at multi-role. We also have a load of F-16s. Once again, standardization there. A lot of these are of different variants. Some of them are F-16As, Cs, Ds, and so on. And so we generally just have a streamlined ability to repair and maintain those aircraft and upkeep them. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to juggle a million things. I just got a text and I was trying to see what that was saying. Also, there's a large number of F-35s that are to be planned. There's 1,763 of them that are planned to be produced. Once again, making logistics a lot easier. So generally, you want to make sure that everything is as standardized as possible in a modern industrialized war. Kind of like how literally everything is standardized, like the ISO container box. Like, these are standardized internationally, the intermodal container. One intermodal container in China is the exact same shape and dimensions as an intermodal container made in the US. And they're made that way so that way they are standardized and are able to interlock with each other, and the efficiency is greatly increased as a result. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I actually heard that we have a follow-up super chat to that question. So, Matthew, what do we got?
So Noah added on and he said, and by terrible for logistics, I mean, if those plants get destroyed by my good chunk of Russian Air Force. And he said, I couldn't fit that in the super chat.
And yes, that is a drawback, but still, a lot of the logistical abilities outweigh that specific drawback. And usually, if you had the money, like the U.S. does, you spread out the parts production over multiple different factories and facilities throughout the country, so that way if one is hit, generally there are less spare parts being produced over an average month, but you still will have spare parts flowing out. I'm not really sure if the Russians have the same kind of a structure due to their lack of funds, but yes, you would be correct in that. And so with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Brian Justin, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Brian, for also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, keep up the fine reporting, gentlemen.
Hey, and thank you for wanting us to keep it the fine reporting. We will keep it up just for y'all, just for all of y'all. And there was a lot of y'all here tonight. There was 71,000 of y'all that have been here so far in total views tonight, which is still crazy. And I got to thank y'all massively for the support. We will make sure to keep on going, all for y'all. And a big thanks to you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running day in and day out. So thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a quick poll real quick, an interesting poll here. Since we brought up beaches, I saw a lot of people talking about it, so I figured to run a poll and see what y'all thought. So what is your favorite beach? Man, that's some beach. 36% said sunny California beaches, while 26% said southern Florida beaches. 19% said East Coast, meaning the Carolina beaches, and 20% said the seaside 38 Panhandle, Florida. And honestly, I would say my first option would be the seaside Panhandle, Florida area. That's pretty nice beaches right there. And then the second option would be the sunny California beaches. Outside of that, I haven't really been to the Carolina beaches to know, and I don't really care for Southern Florida at all, really. So I wouldn't want to go down there probably at all, just to be honest. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say Southern Florida is generally out for me. I'd have to agree with that. I don't really know about the beaches in the Carolinas, but let's take a little look at the ones at Wilmington, so that way we can get a little bit of an idea of what we're dealing with out here.
That's pretty nice looking.
Yeah, they're all right. Kind of look like beaches down in Miami, honestly. Like, they're like the exact same. Honestly, a beach is a
I've heard
beach.
this is where those sharks are at.
There's a shark out there in the water. But anyways, I don't really know about those, so I really can't attest to those. Can attest to the 38 beaches. Those are probably the best that we've ever been to. And Southern California beaches, they're pretty damn nice. Like, let me just show y'all what a Southern California beach looks like. Here we go. Wow, that's really a messed up view. Let's change it to something else. Maybe this one right here. Yeah, here we go. These are pretty cool. I like these.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's like honestly, like when I see those right here, it makes me really like it. It's like those tsunami movies you see, like people getting like engulfed with the water. Like this is where you see it,
Bro, like where people are like drowning in the hundreds. I love that stuff. I'm just kidding, by the way. Like,
whoa,
man, you said like, man, it's like where a tsunami was coming. I was like, that's weird to say you like it because a tsunami's coming. So I was just like adding on.
Like, it's just like a movie reference or something. I don't want to sound like I was like reveling in people like getting caught in a tsunami or something like that.
Man,
That's so crazy.
I thought you kind of were. I was like, man, that's kind of weird to like it because of a tsunami. I was like, okay, I'll just add on to it though. I won't leave you hanging. I was going to be a ride or die there, man. I was going to be a ride or die, and then you left me to die, man, on my own. I went out there to help you, and then what did you do? You drowned me. But also they have this classic railway car over here from the Southern Pacific that just sits here. I don't even know why they have it, but just kind of sitting there. We passed that actually on the train when we were heading through this area. Yeah, no, we passed by. But hey, look. There's the car again. The people are taking pictures of this thing. They like it. And that's what the inside of the station looks like. Very classic. Very Southern Pacific style.
Very nice. Very nice.
Man, this guy's going through it, though.
Man, I feel for that dude.
Man, I feel for that guy. I feel for blood. But, man, honestly, dude, they should make rail cars like this again, man. They got to make them, like, thick, solid steel. And then if people don't like it, call in the National Guard. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Old Warrior, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, as well, for being a longtime channel legend and also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, do you know anything about the car carrier ship abandoned and burning off the Alaska coast, EV fire?
I haven't heard of it, actually. Let's go pull it up. Roll on, roll off, ship. And we should get some news on that. Let's see here.
Like on Roro ships.
Roro. Man, actually, man, because of how top-heavy these things are, there's a nickname that's been given to them in the maritime community, and they call them the roll-on, roll-over ships.
That's interesting. Yeah, you know that one rolled over, like, off the East Coast a while back.
Yeah, man, a lot of these have actually rolled over around the world because if you don't tie down the cars properly, a lot of the weight can shift, throwing off the center of balance and making it practically impossible to right the vessel in heavy seas, especially when that starts to happen. So it's been pretty common that these things could just roll on over, and usually they roll over so quickly the crew doesn't even have time to bail, and usually a lot of these go down with all hands if they roll over like that. So a little bit of a risky one to be on, at least from what I've heard. But beyond that, it doesn't seem... Let's see if I just put in news. Oh,
there it is right there.
It's right there. 2 days ago, actually. Let's see. I'm going to click on the article off screen, though, and read about it, just in case there's, like, ads or some sort of weirdness. Let's see. Around 300 vehicles, including 800 electrical vehicles. So, a crew of the cargo ship carrying those vehicles, fire broke out on board. All 22 crew members were safely evacuated from the ship after they failed to put out the fire. Zodiac said as it focuses on salvaging the vessel. They were evacuated via lifeboat and were being transferred to a nearby merchant vessel in tandem with the Coast Guard. And the Liberia flagged ship left China's Yantai port on the 26th and was on the way to Lazaro Cardenas in Mexico. Interesting. I actually didn't hear about that. That's the first time that I've heard about that, and I thank you for the support and sharing an interesting story with us there. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least with what we were able to find out right there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wan108888, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wan10, as well, for that support. He said, no, he said, I say more voices, lots of voices. Bring some good to otherwise horrible moments in history. Super chat for voices. And to those that hate them, I'll super chat us and say so. Ha ha ha. And LSA.
And thank you for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And yeah, the voices are a mixed bag. Usually people want to hear them when we're not doing them, and then when we're doing them, there's honestly more people complaining that we're doing them than people asking for us to do them. It's really it gets kind of annoying because we just try and make sure that we're making folks happy here and doing what folks would want. And then there's always some group that's a little bit too high on their laurels to have a bit of fun and enjoy a voice here and there. Like the whole people don't get this, but sometimes the voices that we do are supposed to be annoying because that's kind of the comedy in them, is like the annoying side of it. Like for example, like the Biden voice, it's supposed to be annoying. Also, along with the Trump voice that we like, those are supposed to be annoying because that's kind of like the comedy in them. And then people don't get that. Because I don't know, either they're too literal or something, or that's not their humor, so then they just go off, and then they want to take it out on us in the chat that they don't get the humor, and then it's like, well, it's really killing the whole vibe, and it makes it really hard to keep doing that, because it's like, yes, people do enjoy it, but we're getting, like, hammered so badly in the chat for doing it, that it's like, dang, it's like, it honestly makes it hard to do it, because every time you're about to do one of those voices, people are about to go mental and lose it, because they just don't have a funny bone or something. But beyond that, I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. We are going to try and do voices as much as we can, but we'll have to kind of take it night by night, and eventually we'll probably just end up giving up again and not doing them, because it just gets annoying to deal with. Like it's not like it's a small group in the audience, but they're killjoys, and it's hard to just deal with that on a night-to-night basis and then try and keep it going, and just pretend like they're not running their mouths endlessly in the chat, going stick to the news, stop the voices, that kind of stupidity. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Ron Corbett, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Ron, as well, for that $20 support. He said, everyone seems to miss the point that a small country like Ukraine is destroying Russia with 10,000 cuts and not a huge nuclear strike. And I think the oligarchs took the money that was supposed to be used to build the Russian military.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Russian oligarchs did kind of skim the money away from the military over time. And I'd also have to say that as far as what's going on, and can you reread the first part of that, Matthew, really quickly?
He said, everyone seems to miss the point that a small country like Ukraine is destroying Russia with 10,000 cuts and not a nuclear strike.
And I would agree. They have been doing that for years, and a lot of people don't get that. But so far, the Ukrainians have been having a great deal of success in being able to do that. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Verna Weeks, who puts in a $14 donation. And thank you very much, Verna Weeks, as well, for that support. They said, I hope this one works. And it did. Thank you for that. They said, LSA, and thank you for being here almost every night. And I enjoy listening.
And thank you so much for enjoying the stream and being here almost every night and supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and keep this thing rolling. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $14 support from Linda. And thank you, Linda, also for that support. I don't see a comment attached to it, but we do appreciate it very much, and we appreciate that generosity. And we also have a $10 super chat from Shaggy Trip. And the Shaggy says, Russian payback seems futile, and grasping straws targeting populated area rather than the military. It shows either desperate or lack of military leadership. And what say you?
I would agree. It's either desperate lack of military leadership or a lack of intelligence that's resulting in that. I'd say it's a deliberate act, though, and largely just an act of terror that the Russians are conducting against the Ukrainians. But the reprisals never make any sense because the Ukrainians actually hit military targets that Russia is using to keep the war going. And in response, instead of Russia hitting Ukraine's military, they attack the Ukrainian civilians, which just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it honestly is a big reason why the Ukrainians have done so well in the war, is that for some reason, instead of Russia actually actually going after the military and actually hindering the ability for Ukraine to defend itself. They're always going after civilians instead, and really causing no big difference in the war rather than additional suffering and terror for innocent people. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I thank you once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 support from Blue Flam 777 LSA. And he said, words have been spoken, words have been said. My granny has more sense than some bullheaded businessman. And LSA, in question to the chat.
And LSD, and I got to thank you so much for the support and help with this channel and keep on running. And I got to say that there are a lot of people out there with a good bit of sense. And there's some people out there with no sense. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help it to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And the live chat question goes to Jezza, who says, have you heard that the new South Korean president is trying to repair the relationships with North Korea?
It's not really like that, though. It's not like they're going to reunify, because a lot of people take things and run with it, and, you know, the reconciliatory sort of a thing has been something that was tried by earlier North Korean presidents in the late 80s and 90s, pretty much all the way up until 2007. That was kind of the prevailing theme of South Korean politics. So it's kind of just a return back to what it was before North Korea nuclearized in 2007. It's not really anything that's going to be critically severe or jeopardize the West's standing inside of this area of the world. But I have heard about it, but it's not what people are making it out to be. This is something that has happened in Korean history for, you know, decades in the past before. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I've heard, but it's not really a point of concern or worry, because somehow, I don't know how, but it's becoming a political thing in America with what the South Korean president is, and I'm not really getting it, because both sides have been heavily misinformed on anything dealing with South Korea and North Korea. Like when I say misinformed, they've done no research, and then they take it and they just kind of run with it, and they're like, oh, you know, he's like a freaking communist. He's going to reunite with North Korea, and he's trying to turn the whole thing into a communist shithole. And then the other side is saying, no, he loves peace, and it's time for it to end. And it's like, none of these people know what they're talking about at all, because they don't know Korean history over just the past 60 years, really. And so it really shows. And it's just so annoying to watch public discourse revolve around two camps that have no damn clue what they're talking about. And it's just crazy, folks, because if you look at it, if you look at everything like that, you'll actually find out that neither political party in America has any damn clue of what they're actually talking about on anything. And they just say things, and they make no sense. Like, that's why I don't really like to pick political sides here on the channel, because I just don't really see any of them making any sense. Like, when I sit there and look at it, I'm like, where in the hell are they getting this from? And then they'll pull like one thing out of history, and they heavily misconstrue what it actually meant, or the context behind it, to support what they're doing, or to support their claim, and be like, see, it's legitimized through history. And it's like, no, it's not, because you're completely misunderstanding history, and you're pretty much propagandizing it. And that's also something really stupid that I've seen a lot recently too, is that people like Musk, just to specifically state him, because this is one I saw that was annoying. He said, wow, I'm just realizing that, you know, we've been lied to. It really makes you wonder how much of history is a lie. It's like, well, it's a lie if you're stupid and you don't read. Like, you know, yeah, it is a lie because you're getting a basic rundown. But if you're someone like me who actually reads history, it's always a lot more nuanced. And then people who make history into a really simple and easy thing to digest, where it becomes, this is clearly what it is without question, and there's no nuance to it at all. Those are the people that are lying to you. Like, those are the people who are outright going out of their way to turn history into a political tool. Because if you read U.S. history at all, nothing is really that clear. There is always some kind of an actual justification or a reason for both sides to do something to every story that makes somewhat sense, at least for that period in history. If you sit down in and put yourself in their shoes, you'll go, okay, both sides actually had a little bit of credence to whatever they were doing at that point, or there was a reason for it. But the way that people go about it nowadays, like the Republicans or the Democrats, they'll go and take history and they'll just completely they'll completely throw out most of it and only take the parts that support their agenda, and then they run with that. And it's just such a bad bastardization of history that it's leading a lot of people to distrust history in general instead of just looking at it for what it is. Like, for example, a lot of people distrust history because, for example, with things like, let's see, Vietnam, like, depending on how people look at that, they'll say, oh, it was a terrible thing or it was a great thing, depending on who you were talking to. And they completely remove any parts of history that make it kind of a gray area. And if you go through all of the history of the Vietnam War and why the U.S. got involved and what we did over there and why we were over there and what we were doing and what was being done in response, it actually is something that you just kind of have to take as a thing. It wasn't good or bad. It just happened, and we were involved in it. We had to get involved. There was no other choice. It didn't really go incredibly well. It wasn't received well by the American public, but that was because there was a generally differing kind of a social shift going on in the U.S. at the time, and that was because it started to become, and that's what made it wildly unpopular. Although there are a lot of reasons in both directions that could make the war bad or good, if you take it as a historical event, there is no way to characterize the Vietnam War as a bad or good war. It was just a war, and it was a war that we ended up leaving and not really achieving any of our goals in, and that's why a lot of people look at it negatively today, or a lot of people look at it negatively because they said we should have stayed. It's those kinds of things. I just don't really like that kind of stuff. Like, for example, there's a million examples. I'm trying to think of which one to even grab right now. Dang, let me think. Oh yeah, the founding fathers with the freedom of religion, those sorts of things. Like, people just go and cherry pick history. Well, all of our founding fathers were Christians, so obviously it's only freedom of religion for Christians. Or it's no, it was freedom of religion for everything, including cults. Like, like you have like two extremes. Or it's freedom of religion, meaning that there shouldn't be any religion in the government and we should destroy all organized religions, or some sort of a theory like that. And it's like, it just completely removes any of the actual nuance from history. And there's also a complete misunderstanding on stuff like that. Because some of the founding fathers, by the definition of their period, were practically atheists. Some of them were. Like Benjamin Franklin, who was a key founding father, actually didn't believe in Christianity. He just believed that there was some sort of a greater creator out there, but it wasn't the Christian God. It was just something out there. Like, that's what he thought. It was actually pretty common in the Enlightenment period for a lot of those kind of people to say that they don't believe in the Christian God, but they believe that there is some sort of a God out there. The way Isaac Newton put it, when he spoke about it, was that there was a great clockmaker out there that pretty much set up the universe like a clock and ran it like a clock. That's what he said. And that was a very common theory by the time of the 1700s, when the U.S. was founded, the late 1700s. And so a lot of those founding fathers largely fell under that criteria. And then there were a load of other founding fathers that fell under different criteria. Some of them were Quakers. Some of them were just largely Anglican, nearly, almost members of the Church of England itself. There were Puritans. There were many different kinds of religious sects. And a lot of people don't put in the historical context, but that back then, different sections of Christianity were practically considered totally different religions. Protestants and Catholics look at each other today like followers of Islam and Christianity look at each other in the present day. They looked at each other as entirely different religions. They were not even similar. And that's something that a lot of modern Americans don't even look into history enough to actually get the nuance or understanding of that. Or a lot of Americans don't get the nuance and understanding that for most of American history, like, for example, on the Second Amendment, which is like, and there's no clear answer ever to any of this stuff, and so so trying to support it with history or create a historical narrative to say that it's one way or the other is just absolutely stupid, because there are a lot of people in the modern U.S. that say that gun rights are to be limited entirely to state militias, which is the National Guard, and private citizens aren't allowed to own firearms. Or there's a lot of people saying that that guns were actually given to the citizens so that way they could overthrow the government. And both of them are just complete bastardizations of what the Second Amendment really meant, and also the way that it was followed through on for the next 40 years after the Bill of Rights was made, along with the Constitutional Convention, that showed generally how the Founding Fathers wanted that to be followed through on. And it was a pretty laissez-faire kind of a thing. They left it open pretty much to the states alone to be able to regulate that how they wanted to. And you can see that throughout most of history. Places like, for example, the state of Kansas actually had some pretty restrictive gun laws early on in their history due to events like Bleeding Kansas and also the creation of the Wild West not long after that. There was actually some pretty restrictive gun laws in the state of Kansas for some time. Historically, the state of New York has always been pretty restrictive on firearm laws, while other states would let you do whatever. Like, for example, it was pretty common to go into Chicago, Illinois, and be able to buy yourself a Tommy gun out of a hardware store if you wanted to, up until the the late 1920s, I believe, when the National Firearms Act came around. Those kinds of things, even when you look through history, are not clear, straightforward answers. Because if you actually take history in its totality, there just is no clear answer to anything. It's always been a murky, gray area to literally any question throughout all of history. And a lot of people always like to try and take history in the modern day and weaponize it. And it just really annoys me a great deal that a lot of people just completely misunderstand history, and because of that, their entire worldview is warped in the present day because they don't really know the historical context behind anything, the gray area behind it, and the historical arguments that have been made for or against something, or for this or against that, or for this one thing or for another thing of a slightly different variety. People just don't really get that. And I don't know if it's a failing of the American public education system. I don't know if it's a failing of just the people in general. But it's a really kind of a bizarre thing how that's been going these days. And that's something that I've seen a lot recently with the South Korean president and the understandings of how South Korea and North Korea have interacted with each other since their creation after World War II. And it's something that annoys me a bit, because when I look at that stuff, it's like, these are nothing burgers, really. That's why I don't even cover it as a news topic, because it's like, it's a nothing burger. Historically, even just 20 years ago, that was a fairly normal thing to happen in the Koreas, for them to try and talk and soften up their relations with each other. It was a mutual thing by both countries. And now it's being viewed as something that is radically communist, and this guy is trying to take South Korea and turn it into a communist state, which just isn't the case, even historically. But with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And that's not at all a critique of your super chat. That's more so just a critique of the whole of the United States, and something that I've been annoyed with lately on that is pretty much endemic of nearly every single topic nowadays. Is a lot of people talking about it that don't even really know a lot of what they're talking about, and they kind of like lead the entire zeitgeist of the conversation that way. Also, Matthew, I'm a little bit up in the air on that one. I don't really know. If you want it, you can have it though.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that over here, but it takes a lot for me to talk in text these days. And also, for some reason, man, I'm feeling a little bit on edge tonight. I don't really know why. But with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here, our next super chat, goes to E. Johnson, who puts in a $30 donation. He actually puts in two of them. I think there's a third one on the way as well. And thank you very much, E. Johnson, for that support, and also supporting all of our work here on the channel. And we do appreciate that very much. And his first one here, he says, "Hello there, Enforcer.
Oh, hello.
You like trains, and I like submarines." Oh, is that right? He said, "If you have time for a rabbit hole, you can look at when the World War II submarine, the USS Barb, sank a Japanese train during a mission."
Well, let's take a gander at this. Let's see here. It must have been a railroad ferry, right? Like I'm guessing it was a railroad ferry. So let's take a little gander here. So originally it served in its lifetime as a U.S. submarine, and then later on it actually turned into an Italian submarine. But let us see here where they sank the train. Let's see. Wrought havoc. Retired. Let's see, heavily mined upon completion. Let's see. So during the night of the 23rd of July, 1945, these men were sent ashore at Karafuto, Japan, and planted an explosive charge that subsequently wrecked a train. And those were the list of people involved. This raid is represented by the train symbol in the middle bottom of the battle flag. And you can actually see it right there. It actually shows a little train right there on their battle flag. That's actually pretty wild. Apparently, it's the only submarine to ever have technically destroyed a train. So what?
I like that shark. I like that shark in the middle a lot. I don't know what it is, but I like it.
Bro, I actually want to see that shark up close, and they don't have any better pictures of the thing. So that's a shame, man. Let's see if I can get a better picture of the patch. Bro, that shark means
That's
business.
not even a shark. That's like a guppy or something. That's a guppy fish.
Bro, that's le guppy. It's like, man, look at that guppy. But dude, this is an interesting story. I actually did not know of the story of the USS Barb destroying a train. What a way to mix them all together. I gotta say, I thank you for the support, E. Johnson, and I thank you for sharing that. And that actually looks like a picture of the train that may have been destroyed right there, possibly. So really neat, actually. Really cool indeed. And I gotta thank you for the support and sharing that with us, because I wouldn't have known about that story if it wasn't for your support and helping this channel to keep on running, actually. And so with that, we're on to your next one.
All right, and his second one here is another $30 super chat. And once again, big thank you, E. Johnson, for that support. He said another cool train in submarines, is the fact that a modified Fairbanks-Morris train engine is installed as a backup generator on the Los Angeles and Seawolf class attack sub and Ohio class boomer.
Really? That is... I actually did not know that, E. Johnson. And let me go see Fairbanks-Morse engine on a submarine. Let me go see if I can find that. The Fairbanks-Morse 38.814/8. Let's see here. It was developed in the 30s. U.S. diesel engine, backup on most U.S. nuclear submarines. Let's see. Wow, that is actually interesting here. Well, here it is. This is the... Well, that's just a cylinder of it, actually. But these are... Let's see. This is a Fairbanks-Morse engine as a backup generator in the USS Silversides right there. And let me see. Sadly, we don't have a picture of it actually in a nuclear submarine, it appears. But this was also put into railroad service on... What? What was it put in it? Let's see. They had good success. Let's see. I think they had good success with their early switching locomotives, but the 38 mainline service. I remember this now. E. Johnson, actually, I remember now that I'm looking at this, because I read an entire history of diesel-electric locomotives. I remember that Fairbanks-Morse actually ruined their company. They actually went bankrupt and out of business because of that decision, because the marine engines were made for stationary, cleaner service, and operating an engine on the railroads is actually a lot more grimy than one would believe, and it leads to a lot of mechanical failures, especially for engines with higher tolerances like these, which are marine engines, which are generally kept a lot cleaner than their land-based counterparts. And so Fairbanks-Morse engines actually started to get a pretty bad reputation for being unreliable, because they were pretty much stationary marine engines being put into moving mainline diesels, and it ended up terribly for the company. They actually ended up going out of business. And so, I think if I remember correctly, they went out of business, and then Baldwin, let's see, it was Baldwin Hutchison or something like that. They went out of business, and then finally Alco went out of business, but they kind of hung on for a little while in the export market, and then that just left EMD and GE as the last main American locomotive manufacturers in the country, and they pretty much held that since the 60s onwards. But still, let me actually go show you all a Fairbanks-Morse engine, like an actual locomotive engine. So Fairbanks-Morse locomotives. Because these were interesting. I don't really know if I like them, because they look a little odd. But this was, let me see here. Let me see. Where's their famous ones? We want the mainline ones. Yeah, the road switchers. Here's what their road switchers looked like. And I don't really like them too much, really. Like, they're a little bit odd
So
to me.
faded, like piss yellow.
Piss yellow! Bro, you're about to turn into Gordon Ramsay. The only thing more pissy about this paint job is the poor performance of the engines. You know, something like that.
What
You're about to
you taking a piss? What you minging?
I just had a calypso, and it is heavy minging. But anyways, I just don't really like the Fairbanks-Morse engines. I actually like the Baldwin ones better. But let me see. Let's see. Do they have any pictures of these? They actually do. This was another model that they made. I just don't like them. I don't like them. I just don't like them. Baldwin, let's see. Baldwin Lima, I think is what it was. Made better ones, in my opinion. But all of them were really weird, and you kind of showed because they all went out of business. But let me see here if I can find y'all one of the weird, not like the ones that were niche like these, like they were just hideous, but they were also quite niche. But I'm trying to find the ones that actually had some limited commercial success and show them to you, because they were bizarre. Like this one. What the hell was that?
I don't like that.
This thing was hideous, and also they did terribly. These actually did take stationary marine engines, and for some reason the people that were designing this thing said, "Hey, what if we just took 2 marine engines and we just stuck them on one train?" And that's what they did. So there's one engine on this side, one on the other. Thing was just terrible, because if one engine broke down, the whole thing went out of service and you had to repair it. So it was pretty much taking 2 locomotives out of service every time one engine broke down. So this thing was just wildly unpopular for that reason, and usually this thing would wind up being put to the scrappers just years after they were brought in service. And then they made this. Like, this is just worse. Like, it was even worse than the first. And so these actually right here killed the company. Like, that's definite, because they pretty much sunk all of their money into making large mainline road switchers, and these did so badly that they practically had no sales. I think they sold like 12 of them or something like that, and then the company just folded after that and went out of business. And it deservedly did. It was just a terrible design. They also made the centipedes, which actually do have a bit of a following, because they're just bizarre. Like, look at that wheelbase. It's called a centipede because it has like about 100 axles, like a centipede nearly.
I don't even understand what the benefit of having that many wheels would actually be in practice either, rather than just looking funny.
I forgot what the actual purpose for them all was. I think a lot of them actually were connected to an actual traction motor somehow. So it was supposed to provide better tractive effort or traction on the actual roadbed. But I just don't really know. Like, these things are kind of neat to me because they are, centipedes. Like, that's kind of neat in a way, but also it's just a little bit too unconventional, a little bit too abstract to me. They also made the shark nose, which this thing truly does have a cult following. Like, people love these, and a lot of these are found still on heritage railways and like museum railroads and stuff because of the weird shape of their nose. The Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central bought the most of these, so generally you'll find these in railroad museums kind of up in the Northeast. But I don't like them too much. Like, generally, I'm a pretty classic kind of a person. I like my Alcos, I like my EMDs, and then I like General Electric once they started to enter the market in the 60s, because they had some pretty cool stuff, even like it's their first run-of-the-mill locomotives that they made. But anyways, still interesting stuff. But beyond that, that kind of like engine that they used on the submarines, because I remember in the book they mentioned that it was a marine engine that they started to put in their locomotives. Those did terribly. Actually, that's the reason why the company ceased to exist. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Matthew, you sat there and said, I don't understand the train foamers, but I understand the car foamers, like the E30 and the E92. E30 and E92 have as little meaning to me as a DT66 2000 would have to you, I think. Like, it's like, what is that? I don't even know what it is. And
You understand? Do you know what those are?
Those are BMWs.
Yeah, those are, I'm not sure if they call them chassis codes or model codes or whatever, but those are models for like the M3.
I just call them design types because that's kind of what they would be in like a locomotive world. But I mean, that like the E30 is really cool. I think it's a classic BMW, and also just
that is the most classic. Like, honestly, if I could have like a really nice restored version of that, I would drive it full time.
And also the E92 is also really clean looking as well.
This was the best one. Like, for engine power, that V8 sounded fantastic. It was like a Mustang, but it didn't have the Mustang look. It had like the European sports car look to it, and it had the Mustang sound and engine, which looks pretty good.
Yeah, it just looks really nice. Even in orange, which is a color that's really hard for a car to pull off most of the time, it still looks incredibly good. I like.
Oh yeah, you think orange looks good on this one right here? You should see a BMW 1M in the orange color like that. It's like a famous color for that car. There it is, right there. This thing is famous. Yeah, this thing right here is a excellent drift car. It's also a really good little fun car to dart around. It's very small, very compact. The proportions on it are a little bit weird, but I've seen one in person, and these things are super tunable. Like, very, very good cars to tune, and very cool. They sound good too.
They do look pretty cool. Honestly, I'm not massively big into cars, but I can talk about them and be interested in them to some extent. But for some reason, I'm not really interested in personal vehicles too much that are just used by individuals. I always find industrial grade vehicles and machinery to be interesting because they have a very big impact on how the country runs. But actually, just the production of these cars alone actually have a big impact on how this country has evolved over the past 100 years or so. The railroads actually play a massive part in producing these kinds of automobiles. Generally, all of them are transported to their end market in some extent by the railroads, funnily enough, because it's the most efficient way to move them. I can actually show y'all that this is something kind of cool, actually, around here in Alabama, is that if we follow the Norfolk Southern main line through Bessemer, and I follow it on out here, we actually will... Oh, what is that? Oh, that's a little itty-bitty car yard right there, actually. But we're going to go find the big one that's actually attached to the factory. So, here... Wait, is this it? That can't be it. It's got to be further down then. Oh, yeah, right here. So, the main line passes, right? You got this little collection yard here that switchers operate in. These are like the little gen set things. I hate them. Just like an MP15 or something like that. But they put all the auto racks here. They just drop them off. And then these little switchers push them around this corner here. You can actually see a load of them are already waiting or pretty much stacked up, ready to go. But they put them here. And they put these little racks behind them, and then these drivers will take the cars and drive them up into the auto racks. And the way that these things work is that it's like a giant road inside of the auto racks. So you can drive this car all the way down to the end auto rack without stopping. Like it creates like a bridge. Yeah, so that you
also, you know, a good idea for you, since you're so into trains and stuff like that, is you could create a movie and based around like a horror movie around trains or something like that, like A Night at the Rail Yard, and call it The Switcher.
Bro, dude, that's actually a good idea, bro. We're gonna call it. We're gonna call it Switcher. Let's see, nothing but knuckles. You know, like the knuckle couplers, but it's gonna be like, you know, like they're like slamming you to death, like punching you to death. It's gonna be something like that, like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, or whatever. Yeah, that's
call it the Switcher. The Switcher, Raw Axle.
Yeah, bro. Dude, switch your knuckles and grease or something like that. It's like something stupid. But it's really neat how they set up the whole auto rack system and run it. It's a really cool thing. And let me go see if I can show y'all like a video of auto racks getting loaded, because they are really cool to watch. Auto rack loading. Oh, I found one actually, dude. This is sick. You want to see what it actually looks like to load up one of these auto racks with like a car?
Can you show it without copyright?
I think we can. I think we can get away with it. So I'm going to mute the audio though, but I'm going to show you all the clip, because this is actually how it works for the drivers that load up these auto racks. So you can see them driving it out of the storage lots, which are the ones like down here pretty much. So they drive them out of the storage lots, and you can see the auto racks right there. They're all lined up, ready to go. And let me skip forward a little bit. So they make it to the actual ramp. They drive up the ramp. You take these ramps are kind of like jet bridges. Pretty much you just push them up to the actual rack, the auto rack cars. So you get them on the ramp. You drive them up. And then all of the cars are connected, actually, because they're like, once you open up those giant swinging doors, there's actually these little pull-outs, and you pull them out, connect them all together, and it creates pretty much a giant road up here that you can drive them down to the end of all the cars in. So then all you do is you just drive it down the cars. This is actually pretty sick, man. I gotta say, like, I'm really a big fan of this whole deal.
Man, that's pretty neat.
You drive them down to the end of the cars, you park it, and then they hop out of this side, and then they go grab the next car. And you see the next one coming in. But that's actually
how that works.
Yeah, that's actually how pretty much all of y'all will end up getting your car. At some point, it actually took a trip on a train from usually the factory or wherever it came from, if it was a port of entry like an import car, and they take it to where its final destination is. Here in Birmingham, a lot of these cars that are at this factory right here might end up at our intermodal facility on the northern side of the city, run by BNSF. And you can actually see that they have auto rack unloading facilities right here, and you can actually see that they have all the cars waiting to be picked up by 18-wheelers. And then brought on their final couple of dozen or maybe 100 to 200 miles, although that would be a little too far, to their final destination where they get offloaded at a dealership. So it's actually a really kind of a cool system there, and cars actually have a very big synergy with the railroads and how they get to their end destinations to be sold.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty neat, pretty neat. But with that, I hope that was a fun rabbit hole for all of y'all, one that's interesting. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one from E. Johnson is his third one, and he throws in another $30 support. And thank you very much, E. Johnson, once again for the third support of the night. He said, "I've been listening to you guys since October of last year, and I'm impressed with your dedication and knowledge. And keep up the good work, and keep speaking the truth, and dive, dive, dive."
Dive, dive, dive. And I got to thank you for the support, E. Johnson, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I also got to say, I got to thank you for appreciating our dedication and knowledge. Knowledge. You know, I feel like we're just kind of an average Joe until sometimes I have the misfortune of listening to some of the bad YouTube channels out there, and then I'm like, actually, we kind of are a little intelligent, just a slither, which kind of scares me because, like, I feel like we're generally low intelligence around here. At least me. I'm not speaking for Matthew on that. Matthew's pretty smart. Me, myself, maybe not too much on some things. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and help with this channel to keep on running and throwing in the kind words, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be here this entire time just rambling like we do. We do that a lot. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, you want to hear the most arrogant thing you could possibly say. I heard somebody say this the other day, and I was like, you got to be joking me. Because when you said that a minute ago, you said, I think I'm pretty dumb sometimes. I heard somebody yesterday say, you know, honestly, like in this political environment today, I feel like I'm dumb as Einstein. It's like, what? It's like, what kind of statement is that? It's like, it sounded like it was like a self-depreciating statement at first. Then you say he was dumb as Einstein. It's like, that's the most twisted statement I've ever heard in my life. It was like an arrogant statement and a depreciating statement at the exact same time. Honestly, kind of a brilliant statement, actually. It was confusing as hell, but at the end of the day, it was kind of bad.
So pretty much what he's saying is that he's a genius.
Yeah, basically, and like sort of like masked language a bit.
Yeah, that's dude. Honestly, man, that kind of sounds a little narcissistic. Honestly, like it's like, man, and then someone like that will have a hot take like the moon landing was faked, and then it's like, okay, well, you know, it's like, okay, no, you just lost.
Now you're dumb as a brick.
Yeah, it's like now you're as stupid as really anyone in politics right now. But anyways, that we are now on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to David Little, who throws in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, David Little, for that $20 support, and we appreciate it very much. And he did not leave a comment, but Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support, David Little, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel little and keep it running. And so a big thanks to you once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Max TNT Graphics, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, with you daily and headset at work. Oh, pretty cool. He said, I love the real news and the comedy, and Romanian and Germany, and raised on U.S. movies. Mad respect for NATO. Long live the USA. Love Ukraine, and down with Putin.
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic. And I got to thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep running and throwing in some kind words. We always love to hear some kind words, and I got to say, we're happy to join you at work. We hope that we are helping you to get through work a little bit quicker tonight. And I got to thank you massively for the support and help with this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and I got to thank you massively once again. And also, Cold Art put it a great way before we move on to the next one. He said, too much history to know it all, and that is right. There is just so much history, and the more you learn about history, you find out the less you knew originally. Well, it happens every single time, and that's always why I'm trying to read and learn about history, because learning more about it actually creates more loose ends. And it's something that I think someone who actually has intelligence can admit to, is that they don't know everything, because there's no way to know everything and be right all the time on everything. People who admit that they know everything are probably the stupidest people alive, because they're so ignorant they actually think they know everything, and they pretty much settle in and are proud of their own ignorance. It's something else to say, you know, I don't know the answer to something, or this isn't the case. Like, I would say that tonight, it's a fairly intelligent kind of a thing we did to say that we didn't have enough proof and evidence to say that an F-16 shot down the SU-35, so we're not reporting that. And we just openly are fine with admitting that we don't know everything, and we don't know the actual answer to that end point of the news, what shot it down. We actually don't know. I feel like that's a fairly intelligent thing, because it actually has the humility and the knowledge to say, we don't know everything. And yes, we do cover the news, but sometimes the news isn't total. We can't know everything. Instead of what other people have done out there today, which is not know, much like we don't know, and then just say it is 100% an F-16. Like that is to me, the true mark of intelligence is to actually have some humility and say, I don't know everything, but this is what I know, and this is what I'm thinking, but I'm open to thinking differently if there's more information to prove me wrong, even if I don't like to hear that information.
Me personally, I'm not reading the history books right this second because I'm waiting on the Neuralink, so that way I can just get it all at once. I'm going to save time that way.
Man, I'm waiting for the Neuralink so that way, depending on the political feelings of the guy who runs the company, you could just get electrical shocks for thinking one way or the other. I'm really waiting for that.
Legalize brain cancer. Legalize brain cancer.
Legalize seizures. Legalize seizures. It's like, man, like I'll tell y'all something. I'm just going to tell y'all something. I'm never putting anything in my brain that is controlled or created by a private company. That's never going to happen.
Hell no, absolutely not.
Because I think if y'all are watching a clown show right now that's going on in the government with like the whole like the billionaires are fighting, like acting like this is their reality TV show. I don't want those people putting something in my brain. Like, I think I'm good. So, I'll just put it that way. And I also didn't like the last people too much, and I wouldn't want them to put something in my brain either. So I'm good. I'm just going to pass on that. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Noah Ater once again, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Noah, for the second or third support of the night. He said, auto racks are also used by Amtrak on their auto train service, which makes trips between Sanford here in Florida and Lorton in Virginia. And fun fact about those train cars in particular.
And actually, this is cool. I don't know if you know about this, Matthew, but they actually do have something called the auto train. And it's an Amtrak train that actually carries your car with you to Florida.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's a good feature right there, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's one of the only East Coast trains that uses Superliner coaches, which you didn't really seem to be that big of a fan of. I'm honestly more of a big fan of the Viewliners, really, because the Viewliners actually have at least a small, not really a toilet facility, but at least a small wash basin kind of a thing in it. It's that just seems better to me than the Superliner where it's communal bathrooms unless you have a private room. But beyond that, this train is pretty cool. And let me see if I can show y'all. Yeah, here you go. Here's a picture that they actually have on the Amtrak website of them loading up the auto train with the cars. It's pretty cool, actually. I think it's a neat kind of a concept because it mixes the train trip with the luxury of taking your car with you. So it's kind of like a blend of both worlds. Back in the day, though, this actually was run by a private company. Let me go see if I can pull up the original auto train because its paint job was terrible. Here it is, actually. That's the original auto train, and that thing gives me nightmares. Bad. Yeah, that gives me nightmares, honestly. I don't know. Someone said, man, I wanted to look like a pimp is running this train. And then they made that. It's using GE U28s or U30s, which look good in most every other paint job except for that one. They look terrible in that one. But yeah, look at that. Oh God, that was just so bad. Honestly, dude, Amtrak's logos were an upgrade. Even when it was brand new, that was an upgrade.
Yeah, and that was still like a ripoff of the post office a bit.
Yeah, honestly, man. And it still looked better. But man. Actually, let me go pull this up, man. These are actually one of my favorite Amtrak trains. It's the Amtrak Dash 8s. Look at that. That actually looks cool.
Yeah, it's like a diesel freight train type deal.
Yeah, it is actually. These are actually Dash 8s and Dash 9s.
I said that. I was like, well, that's true. It kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much is. Nothing wrong with that, though, because it's it is in a passenger livery. And sometimes they use them to pull passenger trains, like this picture right here. But I think they're cool, actually, because I like the passenger train livery on a purebred freight diesel. It's not a car body or anything like that. It's just a true freight diesel. And then they painted it up like that. And that just looks neat. I like it, actually. But beyond that,
I think they ought to have it to where back there in the back, passenger coaches and stuff, they have the train controls in each private room, so you can request control of the train and get a little chance to drive it.
I think that's a great idea, man. I think that's amazing.
I think the FCC and the FAA would love that.
Dude, the FRA would absolutely love that. Yeah, let's put controls.
I think the FDA would love that too.
Dude, I think all of them, I think all of them would love that. They'd be like, yeah, why are so many derailments happening? Oh, people are just flooring the train? Okay, like that's fine. It's like, oh, that's perfectly okay. How many people died? 50? Nah, you can't expect them all to make it. But still, these look pretty cool to me. I like them. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well about the whole auto train thing. It is interesting and neat to me. And I got to thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And also throwing a little bit fun fact about a kind of a niche Amtrak service. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Ron Corbett, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ron, as well. He said, I love the trains. I love the trains. And I'm a GP9 fan myself. And I had a huge HO gauge that my dad built in the early 50s. And I think China is trying to distance itself from Xi, appears to be going out to curry favor with the U.S. LSA.
And LSA and the Jeep 9s. This is a Southern Pacific bloody nose paint job right here. I like it. But the Jeep 9s are classic. Really the first successful road switcher design, I think outside of the GP7 or the Jeep 7 right here. This was the first successful road switcher in all of America, and then I think the GP9 took that and really ran with it, and I think is one of the most successful road switchers out there in history so far, if I remember right. But still, these things are pretty neat, I will have to admit. And it's really cool to hear that your dad built an HO scale layout, because I've always been looking at HO scale layouts, and some of them are really good. Like, not the basic ones. I'm trying to see if I can find y'all a good picture of like a really cool looking one, like these. Like, these look really cool. I just like the detail in these kinds of models. They're really impressive, actually. But there's a lot of them like this. I've been looking around at them because I just find it so fascinating that people put so much time and effort into getting the detail here down, and it's just like, wow, that's amazing. And a lot of people base these off of tracks or railroads that they grew up near, so it's just really neat to see they're rebuilding pretty much something that they saw when they were either like a young adult or in their childhood or something like that, and pretty much putting it to form forever in a miniaturized scale. Like it's just really impressive to me, man. Like, look at that, the weathering on the trains, the track layout. I mean, it looks like real life nearly on a tiny scale.
It looks really good. I don't know if you've seen this. I don't want to feed addictions here, because obviously you should always try to get people unhooked. You don't want to keep them addicted. That's cruel. But I don't know if you've seen it. There's like these little FPV, like VR goggle controlled little cameras now that people are putting inside of RC trucks to give you like a first person perspective of driving the RC truck. And the cameras can literally like lean out the window, like you're really looking out the window, and the camera turns and everything with it. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but you can do that for trains too.
No way. That's amazing.
Yeah,
right
like
there.
real. It's just kind of steep because you gotta have some cash to play with, like little hobby stuff like that. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of hobby stuff is really expensive, but that is actually really cool sounding. Like, I would actually give that a try if I could find one that was not too expensive, of course. But just look at this, dude. Like, it just blows me away, the kind of detail that people put into these things. It just really impresses me for that alone. It's like the detail, the attention to detail. Because whenever you listen to these people like run like a YouTube video on this stuff and they talk about it, they'll be like, yeah, back in the day we saw that like the telephone pole had grass growing around the base of it, so we made sure to include that in this layout here. And it's like, that kind of attention to detail, I really respect that kind of stuff. It's an attention to the grind that you just don't really find in a lot of people. And it's like, that's just so cool to me. There's a really cool YouTuber called NS Modeler 24. I think that's the name of his channel. And he has an entire layout of the Asheville division in North Carolina that he has in his house, or something like that. And it's just a really cool layout because he put a lot of detail into it. And when he shows it on videos, it's like, that looks very close, if not identical, to what North Carolina actually does look like in real life. So anyways, I do thank you for sharing that with me about the layout and everything. That's pretty cool stuff to me. But I do thank you once again for the support. And also, I'd have to say, let's see. I would have to say that Xi's doing some interesting stuff lately. There's been a lot of turmoil in China, and it does sound like he's trying to go around and maybe try and make some friends, possibly, but he probably might not find any. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support once again. And we do appreciate that very much. And he puts in the animal noises. He said, Bamu quack. Zelenskyy said, bring on the marmot. Baba oink. And let's squat that fly. Swat that fly. It's marmot time. And rough roof enforcer. A wildebeest noise. And baba marmot.
And
Oh, hello there. Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. I say hello there, Governor. How you doing, Governor? It's a good day here for corruption in the state, Governor. It's a great day. The good old Alabama good old boy system. I say, fantastic. Oh, top of the day, sir. Good hat to you. Thank you very much.
Aw, man. Aw, man, I'm absolutely drowning out here. Aw, man. Aw, man.
Still dealing with that PTSD from shifting to first to second, are you?
Aw, man, it haunts me in my dreams every night having to do any kind of labor. Aw, man.
That clutch, I tell you, it just came in and got him good. He never forgot that clutch. He burned it out every single time. He couldn't just quite pull it off.
And it was the Marmot segment. We love the Marmots. We love the Marmots. We love them greatly. And I got to thank you for support and throwing in those animal noises tonight, Duncan VR, and also allowing us to have a genuine Marmot segment. We love the Marmot, and it just wouldn't be a normal LSA night without it. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I got to tell you what, folks, Russia's getting crazy tonight. They're getting crazy. Let's see here what they're saying. They're making threats, big ones tonight. Let's see here. Reuters is now reporting that U.S. officials expect a very strong asymmetrical Russian strike on Ukraine within days, and it's a certainty, and it's just a matter of timing. Also, Russia has just issued a statement saying we are forced to respond to the West's increased activity in deploying medium and short-range missiles near our territory, and we will respond with the utmost force immediately. So they're getting crazy. They're issuing the threats yet again. So just to report that real quick. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Wen108888, who puts in a 10 once again. And he says, I love trains, big, beautiful trains. That's why I won all 7 train states. We are bringing back clean coal, only the cleanest coal, the cleanest. Because now everything's computer. Sad, LSA.
And I gotta tell you, we absolutely love trains. We love trains greatly. Trains are great. I said, bring back the trains. Where are the trains gone? Under the prior president, there were no trains. People said, where are the trains? We need the trains back. I brought the trains back, and they run better than ever. Sure, there's been some derailments, but if you report those, you're fake news. There has been some What organization are you with? What organization are you with? Fake news. No trains have derailed. East Palestine, never heard of it. I've heard of Palestine. We're making a great deal. We're running the Israelis away from us. We're turning our allies into enemies because we are too weak to stand up for ourselves. But hey, great. On the other side, we are talking to the Qataris, and they gave us a free jet. It's like Halloween out there. You just go up and knock on people's doors, and they give you free shit. Sometimes you see 747, other times it's anthrax. You just never know. You could go to the Iranians, they give you rocks, or maybe a bomb, maybe a nuclear one. You never know. Qatar, private jet, pretty nice. We kind of like it a good bit. But hey, I gotta also say on top of that, that we're going to bring back trains bigger and better. Wait a minute, what's that? Did Putin just say you would nuke us if we tried to bring back trains? I never said anything about trains. I don't even know about trains. Honestly, that the Ukrainians are going to get bombed 10 times worse because no one should have even brought up trains. I don't even know who did that. What stupid idiot brought up trains? Don't even know. Must have been that Elon guy. He's kind of out of here at this point. We don't really like him too much. We don't like his stupid cars. Stupid cars.
I'm sorry, who? Elon? Who's? I've never heard of him. Who Elon?
You know, I got this
Who's that?
piece of junk car. It's called a Tesla. It's called a Tesla. No one buys Tesla. Tesla is a loser. Edison used
Where the hell
them.
did this car even come from? I mean, how did this car even get here? It's just like a floating car, a magical car. It's like a teleportation car. It just showed up right here, and I said, what is this car? What's it doing here? I don't know this car is. Get it out of here. Get it out.
They look at the car and they say, wow, look, it's electric. And I say, ground it and send it out. It's not going to be electric anymore. We're going to knock it out. We're going to destroy the whole company. And I heard that he's not really a big fan of me anymore. Now I'm going to openly threaten.
I said the car was electric. They told me it was electric the whole time. I said, you're damn right that's electric. Give it the chair. Give that car the chair, that ugly car. Put it out of its misery. I said, put it out of its misery now. Don't let that car roll another mile. Get rid of it. No bike lane, junkyard.
I have to also say that I greatly thank Elon for helping me to get elected, but we are now going to be sending the Hooters girl, the Attorney General. We're going to be investigating him for possibly supporting someone. I don't know who it was. Who knows who, but his money is bad money, bad money. He needs to go back to South Africa. As a matter of fact, we're sending all South African refugees back to South Africa. They are not going to be welcome here. They're going to have to go and deal with kill the farmer, kill the boer. They're going to have to go deal with him on their own. That's not our problem. Don't even know who brought that up. What stupid idiot brought up dealing with South Africa? Absolutely ridiculous. Really ridiculous, honestly.
Oh, that's so nasty.
So nasty. That was a nasty thing you said right there. Don't you ever say that again. Don't say that again. That was such a perverted twist of words. Don't you say that. You be quiet. Listen, that is so nasty. You are the worst. Oh my God.
Personally, I don't like tacos. I like burritos. I like burritos a lot better. Burritos, you get a lot more meat and rice. I go to Taco Bell, I tell them, give me a steak grilled cheese burrito. It's great. I get that little stupid Doritos taco. Not a lot of meat. We like meat around here. We like meat. That's why we're going to be executing all vegetable farms. Are going to be burning them to the ground, and we're going to be replacing them with beautiful cattle ranches. They're going to be great. They're going to be huge. Everyone's going to get free beef, and we're going to have nothing but beef with Elon. Nothing but beef with Elon. And everyone else probably by the next few years. We don't know. But hey, it is what it is. It's a laissez-faire. I don't even know what the hell that is. It sounds like some kind of a carnival. But nevertheless, I thank you once.
I heard that Elon lived in Texas. I heard he lived in Texas. I said, what's he doing out there? I thought it was just cows and steers out there. That's what I thought was in Texas. I said, I don't know what's going on out there. I don't know why he moved there. He's wearing this cowboy hat. He's really turned a new leaf out there. And they're saying he's a beef farmer. He's bringing all that beef. He's cutting it up prime rib. He's cutting it up sirloin, even rump. They're bringing it all, even the rump. I said, nobody makes rump like Elon. It's just such great steak. I mean, I've got to add it to the menu.
Some people say that all my exes live in Texas, and as far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely true. Elon lives in Texas, and SpaceX lives in Texas, and we are probably going to be canceling every government contract that we have with these companies because they were great, beautiful, big contracts just last week. Now they're terrible, and they're wasting the government's money. But, it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do, and we'll also be seeing about doing other stuff, do other things that have X in the name, maybe seizing X and making it a government platform. Who knows? We'll have to see. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. And I just saw someone say, things are going to get funnier in LA. Who are you? What organization are you with? You are a discredited organization. Your ratings are terrible. Absolutely terrible. I've never seen ratings so bad. The ratings are so bad, it's unbelievable. I look at them and I go, wow, how can a company do so badly? And they just keep doing worse. You just can't help it. But anyways, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again for support, and I hope you appreciated that greatly.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Laser314, who puts in a 5. And they said, should Ukrainian drones take out the Russian electrical grid?
I don't really see any harm in it anymore at this point, so why in the hell not? I say sure. And so with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Boy, who puts in a 5. And he said, Ukraine needs something called the flanker spanker.
That is a good idea. And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to come up with great ideas like the flanker spanker. I like that.
They called it the flanker spanker. Nobody's ever heard no name quite like that one before in the history of names. Some say it's the craziest name they've ever heard. The flanker spanker. What a character! I tell you, what a character, that flanker spanker. I tell you, that flanker, he knows how to spanker. I tell you, that flanker.
And also, Putin gave me a little bit of a weird look when I brought up flanker spanker, and so we're now going to be reversing the flanker spanker idea. It's going to be a hanky panky. It's going to be a hanky panky. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And also, I just saw someone ask you a question about why are people flying a certain kind of a flag in America? It's called freedom of speech. You can do that if you want. Might not make a lot of sense, but one thing that's never made a lot of sense to me living in the South is why are so many people LARPing for the Confederacy? They lost like dogs. They got beat to death, lost completely. And not only that, they kind of supported questionable things like enslaving other people, but they had the right to fly the flag. They still do. And they have to have that right because it's their right as an American. But beyond that, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to make a complaint out of other people waving around different kinds of flags. When you can fly any flag you want, it's a free country. It's a free country. So with that, I hope that does address that.
It's a free country, isn't it? It's totally free of charge, totally free. You don't have to pay anything to thank me. It's totally free to thank me. No charge for that. Totally free. But it's well, I mean, it's a free country. You know what they say.
It's so free. As a matter of fact, we are now going to be rescinding the orders that we gave that attacking a Tesla dealership is a dangerous act. As a matter of fact, I think that it should be supported. That's probably going to happen next week, I'd assume. But anyways. with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well. But I saw someone ask a question there. Bad Boy said, why are some people flying the flag of the country that they came here to escape? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't. But the thing is that it isn't supposed to make sense. It doesn't have to. Because the United States of America works on this idea that we're a free country. And if you're here, and you generally here as either some kind of an asylee or a citizen or whatever, you generally have a right to do what you want. And so if you want to fly the flag of the Confederacy, or the flag of Mexico, or the American flag, or the flag of the Lee Spring Army, or any other flag from any other country anywhere, you actually have a freedom to do that. It's called the freedom of expression. And yes, people from other countries while in America actually do have the legal right to freedom of expression because the laws apply to the land and the people on it, not just the people who are technically citizens by definition. So I hope that addresses that somewhat well. I personally don't really understand those kinds of arguments because just like people have the right to do whatever they want, you have the right to do it too. And why is everyone so busy trying to get up everyone else's crawl and try and get into what they're doing? Leave it alone and mind your own business. That's kind of what America needs to return to, folks. We kind of need to get the old phrase going, mind your business, again, because a lot of people are getting a little too involved with other people's business because they're either not touching grass or they're not busy enough. So get busy and mind your own business because that's what the entire country's
Man,
about.
that's because the politicians want them to be in other people's business because they're using the people to police each other now. That's why they're turning each party against each other.
Yeah, but still, it's like we're gonna start it here on this channel. Mind your business. Like if you like one thing or dislike it, that's your business. Mind it. Don't go telling other people what they should be thinking or not thinking. That'll all be decided in the votes coming around the next election. It's ridiculous to go around acting like you got a right to tell other people what they can and can't do, considering that they could also do the same to you. So with that, hope that does address that well. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cody Fritz, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Cody, for that $5 support. And you said, on a lighter note, on the move, I know you all are staying in the States, but pop into Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland and have a nice gander in my top 5. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, Cody. I think Switzerland is in everybody's top 5 category. It's just that nobody can really afford to live in Switzerland. That's the problem. It's very expensive. I think it might be more expensive than California, actually. And also, not being a citizen there, that is a big problem because you can only stay there for 6 months or something, then you have to leave. But it is a super nice place, so I do agree with you.
I mean, it's gorgeous. I wish that we could consider moving to a place like this, but I am an American, and I want to stay in the United States because it's a culture and a country I'm very familiar with for the large part. And I would be a Auslander in Switzerland, but it's still a beautiful place, and I would like to visit there someday because just look at that. That's just crazy right there. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Alex Burleton, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Alex, as well, for that $5 support. He said, thanks for all you do, and take one from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will take one from the chat. And so with that, a big thank you to you once again. And we're going to take this one right here. We're going to take this one. I'm actually going to pick it straight out of the chat, Matthew. Team America World Police 420 said, the Confederate flag is treasonous. It's supporting a country that's not American. In fact, it's supporting a country America went to war with. But the issue here, I'm going to address this because this isn't really a thing for opinion. It's a thing of law. You actually have a right in this country to fly the flags of enemy countries. Like, an American can't be arrested for flying the flag of Iran in the United States. Like, that's not a law. That's technically freedom of expression. I'd certainly not agree with it, and I'd say that the loyalties of that specific citizen are very questionable. But at the same time, you have a right to do that. People have a right to support groups that are not good groups. Like, that's something that I don't think a lot of people can really grasp because people act like if it's not what I'm agreeing with, then it has to go. People actually have a right in this country to the freedom of expression. And that actually means that they have the right to pick the groups that we wouldn't really agree with. I would never fly a Confederate flag. I'd never fly a Nazi flag, or any other stupid flags of any countries that we have had to beat in prior times in history, because they are enemies of the Republic. But at the same time, if someone wants to fly a flag like that in this country, they actually have a right to do that. That is a freedom of expression. That is a constitutionally protected right. I think it's I'll have to say, I disagree with you greatly on that, and I find it ridiculous that people have that kind of a mindset, because I certainly wouldn't be friends with someone flying a Confederate flag, or a Nazi flag, or the flag of Iran, or really any other flags of any other countries that I would consider an enemy of the United States. But at the same time, I'm not going to go out my way to say that we should have these people imprisoned and declared traitors to the country for exercising their freedom of expression. That's crossing a serious line. Because who's to say that the next day my beliefs don't become the enemy of the state? Who's to say that? Where does the ball stop rolling? And once you get the ball rolling like that, it doesn't stop. So then the next day you could be the enemy of the state for what you believe in. Oh, actually, the Confederacy is cool tomorrow, so now you're going to go to prison because now you're the traitor, not them. That's how it could end up working. So yeah, you don't want to kind of go down that route. So I hope that addresses that live chat well, because that's a rough one right there. That's pretty much just saying, yes, let's violate people's constitutional rights, which seems to be kind of like a common battle cry these days, and every single criteria for everything everywhere is, yes, let's violate more rights. Let's do it, because it's only right and justified.
Honestly, in my opinion, if you see somebody flying a flag that is disturbing to you, you should maybe, if you feel safe doing it, because sometimes these people are a little bit nuts that they're flying a flag that's a bit extremist, maybe see why they're flying the flag. Because it's like, I'm always curious, me personally, I'm like, what brought somebody to fly a flag that kind of represents a bit of like old school hatred? It's like, what brought you to that point? I'm always kind of curious to hear the explanation. Most times they're just broken people. They're trying to find an outlet to lash out, and they just find some old like version of hatred, and they latch onto it and they run with it. And usually it's not necessarily like a true, like real hateful person. Now they do exist out there. Like, I'm not naive. There are real legitimate, like real bad, like racist people out there and like racist gangs and stuff like that. Some exist in Alabama. I saw it. So it's out there, but some of these people are just seeking attention. Doesn't excuse their behavior, but at the same time, they have the legal right to do it. And we got to be careful about the legality of things, because just because we don't like it, if you start trying to ban it, that gives an authoritarian the right to ban everything. Once you start falling down that slope of losing your rights, and a lot of people don't even understand that until it's too late. And that's not something you can mess up on. If you mess up on losing your rights, they're gone for good. You're not getting them back unless you fight a war at that point, and nobody wants to do that. So that's just, I don't understand why people don't get that.
Yeah, so selling your rights away in wholesale just to stop someone from flying a flag, I don't really get that kind of logic. It seems like you're burning down the whole house to kill a spider. And also, yeah, it's really anti-American, but people in this country have a right to not like the country. Like, I don't know if you know that. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that people who do not like America are going to be declared traitors and put in prison. You can actually dislike the country. You have a right to do that. Starting tomorrow, I could say I do not like the United States. And while that would be absolutely stupid in my opinion, I have all the right in the world to be able to say that according to the rights that we have under the Constitution. So yes, it is anti-American, and I don't like it either. But those folks have a right to do that. And I don't think that right should ever be infringed upon, because that's going to start a real slippery slope of what is the government going to decide tomorrow is offensive or not. That's what that starts. And it really depends on who's in charge. So right now, something like saying things that are, I don't know, pro-Ukrainian are okay right now. Who's to say that that's not okay tomorrow? The government gets the decision on that. So if the government decides that being pro-Ukrainian, even if we're saying it's pro-Western American, is bad, then it's bad. Now we've been put on a list of dissidents and treasonous, and now we're being called anti-American for having an opinion like that. Where does that end? Because you think you get to decide where the ball stops rolling. You don't. Once you allow those people up there in Washington to get that ball rolling, that is not going to stop anywhere. It's going to end up running you over too. So with that, I hope that addresses that well. But with that, I think it wants to give for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Monster Lab, who puts in the $5 donation. And thank you very much, Monster Lab, for that $5 support. And we appreciate that as well. And we do appreciate it very much. And there is no comment attached. So with that, Monster Lab, I'm going to grab something I wanted to grab personally. Here's my thing. I'll say this outright. People don't have to agree with it or not. The Confederate flag, to me, it is history. It represents, in my opinion, a bad time in history. I'm not a fan of eliminating it from history or saying let's tear down the Confederate flags or get rid of them completely. But at the same time, I will say this. I grew up with people that flew the Confederate flag off their truck. And I would ask them, I would say, why are you flying out the back of your truck? I know you got the right to do it. I'm not saying, I can't stop you, obviously. So you do what you want. But I'll say, why are you doing that? And the answer was never really good. It was not good. In my opinion, this is just me. I would say that it belongs in history. It does not belong in the present, just because what it represents. It was a very dark time in history for a lot of people, and it's just not good. I'm not sure what the point is in dragging that into the present and saying, I'm going to fly it today for what reason? Like, why would you do that? It's like, I don't really understand where that's coming from. I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't want to get political, but at the same time, though, someone made a very strong point about it in the live chat, and I just don't understand the vehement nature of wanting to take that into the present. I don't understand that.
Also, they said several of my ancestors fought and died under the Confederate flag. Well, I mean, shocker. Actually, both sides of our family ended up fighting and dying either for the Union or the Confederacy, depending on what part of the family you're from. Well, actually, at some point, if you trace back our lineage enough, you eventually get to a soldier of the Union or a soldier of the Confederacy. But the truth is that country has been defeated. It's dead. It isn't a culture. It isn't anything but a country that popped up out of the United States that specifically rebelled. And this isn't a revisionist history. Whatever way you put it, it either rebelled over the issue of slavery or it rebelled over the state's rights to be able to continue slavery. That was the entire thing. Like, if you look at the state of Alabama's constitution as it was written when it seceded from the Union in 1860, you would see that it specifically says that the state's rights to be able to uphold the institution of slavery was not to be infringed. It makes it quite clear what the entire Civil War was about. Considering that that's not really a great thing, and I think you and I can both agree that slavery isn't something that is really up for debate anymore, whether it's a good thing or not, and considering that country literally popped up, existed, and then died over fighting to maintain that kind of a despotic institution, I think you and I can both agree that it's one thing to be proud of being a Southerner and being a part of Southern culture, but it's a different thing to fly the flag of a country that rose up against the United States, was then crushed by the United States, and it was all over the issue of slavery. I think those two things are distinctly different from one another, and it's something that has been...
Also, the whole situation was bad because, obviously slavery was horrific. I don't think anybody's saying slavery was good. Hopefully nobody's saying slavery was good. It was horrific. So the Confederates were fighting to keep slavery in place, which is obviously shameful. Me personally, the Confederate flag to me represents the ignorance of the place where I grew up. That's what it looks like to me. And I grew up in the Deep South my entire life. I was born and raised here. And I was raised around people that felt like I felt, and I was raised around people that didn't feel like I felt. And most of the people that didn't feel like I felt seemed to be hanging on to some old ways of the South, which was always interesting to me. Because I was like, that's weird. It's like they're flying Confederate flags. They've got opinions that seem to line up with the ideology, and it seems like they're holding on to old hatred. I'm like, that does nothing but keep the country back. Like, honestly, it's like the country's moved on. The war is over. The Civil War was ages ago. That was done, settled, but yet some people can't let it go. And they want us to keep bringing symbols of the past into the present, not as in like a historical sense. They want to bring it into the present as part of their identity. Like, this is them. I'm like, what exactly are you exactly? It's like you're bringing something that's bad. Of course, you have the right to do it, but you're not free of being, judged from other people for choosing to do something like that. I mean, you're going to be clearly judged for that because it's kind of a symbol of old school hatred. So you can't get around that. That's kind of what it was.
Also, another thing here, really quickly, is someone brought up really quickly, only 3% of the people in Alabama own slaves. That is actually incorrect, and I can actually reference you to the Alabama Department of Archives 1850 federal census, which we actually have a record of here, and it actually says that around 40% of the population of the state of Alabama at that time was considered enslaved in 1850 when the census was taken, and I believe that number increased a little bit by 1860. And also another thing is that about 20% of the state, or 25% of the state, was slave owning at a minimum, according to the 1850 census. So that's kind of the run of the mill thing right there. So it is what it is. So I hope that.
And also, let me clarify one more time, because of course people, specifically one person, wants to take my words out of context. When somebody doesn't like what they hear, they start mangling words to make their point. I'm not saying to ban people from flying the Confederate flag. That's the laws in our country. You can fly whatever flag you want, even if it's a flag that is against American interest. You can fly it. You have the legal right to do that. I'm not saying that should be taken away from anybody, but you're not free at the same time to tell other people that may judge you for it and say that person is flying a Confederate flag in 2025 when we've moved way beyond that issue, and there might be something slightly off with that person. If I believe that personally, that's totally my right to think that about the person flying the Confederate flag. Just like it's their right to fly the flag, it's my right to think that about the person flying it. So, you know, some people want to get offended about that, but I mean, people have their personal opinion. I have mine, certainly. And growing up around that, I know what the real reason is behind flying the flag. I'll be straight up honest. People say one thing, but they actually mean another in their minds when they're doing it. And I'm fully aware of that. I grew up down here and I know what that's about. So, you know, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Also, really quickly, let me go ahead and say that. So the whole argument started here, because I said everyone has a right to do what they want. If someone wants to fly the flag of Iran or the Confederate flag or the Mexican flag, everyone has a right to do that. So Governor Ivey gets offended that I said I don't agree with the Confederate flag, but you have a right to fly it. So then got pissed off at me because I said they had a right to do what they want. It's just that I wouldn't agree with that sort of a thing. So then I go through the whole thing of saying this is why I don't agree with it, and now you're acting like I either have to agree with you or there's going to be an issue. So I think if we're looking at this fairly here, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because we've already conceded earlier that you have the right to do what you want. And also you're saying you're not mad, but the way you're writing certainly portrays a different story. You are quite mad. You called us a bigot earlier for saying that the Confederate flag isn't something I personally agree with. So you're quite offended. Like, that's quite clear at this point. So let's calm down, Snowflake. And second off, the other thing is that I'm not going to pretend like I didn't grow up in the South and know what that's about. I know what people who fly Confederate flags are really about. I've never seen one fly a flag and just be like, I just like cornbread, you know, and like, you know, other kinds of Southern foods like fried catfish. I never seen that. Every time I talked to someone who was flying a Confederate flag, it was all about how the South has been in decay because of the emancipation of slaves. It's always been something like that. And so that's something that I certainly don't agree with. And I also don't really agree, in my personal opinion, of ever flying the flag of a country that the United States of America, because I'm an American, not a Confederate, has defeated. I personally view them all as generally enemies of the state for the large part, at least as how they existed. I kind of view the Confederate flag, considering that I'm an American and the United States of America fought and defeated the Confederacy pretty much in the same lines as an Imperial German flag or a Nazi flag. It's all the same to me because they're all countries that we defeated. They're all countries that were enemies of the United States openly, and I'm an American, first and foremost. I don't belong to Dixieland or anything like that. I was born in 2002. I grew up as an American. I'm an American. I'm going to fly the American flag. And I personally do not agree with the Confederate flag whatsoever. But that still doesn't stop people from having a right to fly the thing. That's the difference. But with that, hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And also, you said that wasn't to us. That was to us. So I can go back up and find that exactly. I want to make sure. Let's see here. Let me make sure to go get it, because a lot of people always like to change what they meant. And let me see here. Did it go all the way did it go all the way up? No way. Let me see here. One second. I gotta make sure to find this and reference it, because people always like to rewrite the stories later. Let's see here. Dang, man. Oh yeah, here we go. Confederate flag will always fly here. It's not right for y'all to shame my history. F that. Stop being a bigot. That's what you said. That was directed at us, because we were the only people at that point saying anything about it, because we were bringing up the topic when that was written 20 seconds later, and no one else had said anything about that literally before that in the chat. So that was directed at us. Like, I know there's some backtracking going on there, but I'm also not going to pretend like you didn't direct that right at us. Because right when we read off your live chat and addressed it, you immediately started to engage us, and you never clarified, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that towards y'all, I meant that towards someone else. You immediately started engaging us in the argument there, and because you were directing us in that statement. Personally not offended by it, but I find that kind of a thing to be a little rude. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Monster Lab, who puts in a 5. And let's see. Yeah, big shout out to Mantra Lab. I think I already called that one out, but I think I forgot to put a red check on it. But thank you very much, Mantra Lab, for that support. And our next one here goes to Justin Richardson, producer, who puts in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Justin, for that support. He said, awesome channel and a fan for a few years, and Aussie currently in China. Oh, wow. He said, I hear you like trains, and I'll send you some pics of China trains, and long live the LSA.
Hey, and long live the LSA, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and I'd like to see some Chinese trains. I'm not really a big fan of them, but still, they are interesting to me. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And Matthew, how many Super Chats do we have left?
About 6.
Oh, actually, that's manageable. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Vogue, who puts in a 5. And it said, thanks for the work. And I've been here since the first weeks, all through the Moscow Mike era, and all things are better with me, and wanted to show some support.
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running and the kind words, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I actually did call out Monster Lab twice. He said I got 2 for 1. Matt called out my name twice, LOL. Yes, I did. I also forgot to put the red check on it. But 2 shout-outs to you, good sir. Thank you very much for that support once again. And our next one goes to Blancman, who puts in a 4. He said, that train stuff is fake news, unfortunately. The train news is just one post in Telegram. Sus. And I would say, sir, that is one thing that we have verified right there, the train news, and it was a piece of news that was verified. We could not verify the F-16 shootdown news, but we could verify the train stuff. So that was real. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, we actually had confirmation from both sides, the Ukrainian and the Russian side, that happened. So it definitely happened. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that support. And he said, check out Natural Bridge in Kentucky and LSA.
Hey, let's check out this Natural Bridge in Kentucky. Let's see, the Natural Bridge in... We'll just put in Natural Bridge. Hopefully we'll find one in Kentucky. I'm guessing this is it. Is this it? I don't see a natural bridge around there. There's got to be one, though, because it's called the Natural Bridge Park. Let's see, Natural Bridge. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's cool. It literally is a natural bridge. That's actually pretty neat. That's actually pretty cool right there. I thank you for supporting the channel and sharing that with us. I like to see things like this. That's pretty cool. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. He said, LSA hit the like button. That's an order.
And LSA, hit the like button, and that is an order. And I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plazath, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazath, as well, for that $2 support and also helping to keep us running. And we also have a $2 support from Jeremy Vahill, who said, is the Ukrainian New York safe?
The Ukrainian in New York?
Ukrainian New York safe?
From what I know, it's actually close to an active battlefield right now, so I'd largely assume not. But I can't really tell you for certain at this point, so it's kind of on the fence. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and it's now time to jump into our live chat questions proper and our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, and they said the Morse code decoders say that Russia is not going to have a good day anymore from here on, like wowzers and LLT, LSA.
And there's the sound of money, and y'all hit it dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for continuing to get that message correct time and time again. And I got to massively thank you for that once again. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into one last super chat, and then we're going to be getting on into our live chat questions.
All right, so this one goes to Ron Corbett, who puts in a 10, and big shout out to Ron for that support. He said, it sounds like Israel is helping Ukraine with the high-tech methods of using small cuts to deliver maximum gains, like David against Goliath.
I got to thank you for the support, Ron Corbett. And I'd have to say, it kind of is sort of like that with Israel, but Israel actually hasn't provided much, if any, support to the state of Ukraine that's been of a large scale at all, actually, for the most part. So It's a little bit interesting like that, because we have seen that they provided some armored cars before, but that was just about it. But still, I would have to agree, hopefully, with small cuts, or kind of like a David and Goliath situation, the Ukrainians can overcome with support. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chats. And really quickly, I'm going to address this very quickly, because I see some people saying, well, the slaves have been a thing since the dawn of humanity. Yeah, but not by the 1860s, though. Like, slavery generally had already been outlawed by a large amount of Western countries by that point, by either the 1790s or the early 1800s. Hell, since 1805, the British were actually conducting armed patrols of the African Ivory Coast to ensure that there were no slave ships leaving the African coast. A lot of people don't know that, but that was something that the British had already started to do by the early part of the 1800s. So by the time that the 1860s had come around, the whole idea of slaves just kind of being the norm, which certainly isn't the case nowadays, was already going out of the window by the time the Civil War had happened, and it had kind of been a really contentious issue literally since the nation had been founded. And that's why you had things like the Three-Fifths Compromise and others. Because if it was such an easy open and shut thing, like you're saying, like, hey, look, like, slaves are just a thing, why in the world was it such a big argument in the Constitutional Convention? It was quite literally a massive one. And if you go look at the original Constitution, there's an entire part in how votes are counted that slaves count for 3/5 of a vote. So, you know, like, if you want to go look at that, you can. And if it was as open and shut and easy as you're making it out to be, why was it such a big thing to the founding fathers to argue about whether the entirety of the United States was going to be emancipated, half slave, half free, or all slave? Why was that such a big argument, even in the 1780s, if it was such an open and shut thing? And also, if slavery is just a hoopla whatever, why doesn't slavery exist today? Because if it's just, oh, you know, well, there's been slaves forever, you know, the Romans and the Egyptians had slaves and yada yada yada, why don't we have slaves right now? It's because our understanding of what is right and wrong has evolved, and generally subjugating other people to cruel treatment or depriving them of their freedoms is generally considered to be a not okay thing to do anymore by our modern moral standards. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the live chats. And due to time constraints, we're only going to be grabbing about 3. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right. And also, big shout out to David Little, who just threw in another super chat, threw in a 5 this time. And thank you very much, David, for that $5 support. And we appreciate it very much. And we're now jumping into our live chat questions. And this one goes to Michael. He said, have you heard anything about the sabotage of telecom equipment in Sweden by Russia?
I have not heard of that at the moment. We've heard of sabotaging of cables in the Baltic in the past, but we haven't heard of that inside of Sweden at the moment. So I'd have to declare ignorance on that. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to Judy from the live chat, who said, what size bombs are the drones carrying that they do that amount of damage?
Generally, we usually understand they're carrying somewhere around a 50-kilogram explosive on most drones. That seems to be the Ukrainian standardized explosive yield on pretty much everything at this point. So I'd have to say it's probably somewhere around a 50-kilogram yield. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one is going to go to El Rato, who said, why isn't Western media covering the supposed Xi Jinping being sidelined? It popped up in my algorithm last week. And cheers from Argentina.
And hey, cheers to Argentina. It generally is because most of it's kind of like fabricated. We really don't know anything of what's going on in the Chinese government right now. And it's simply because Xi Jinping hasn't been seen a lot in the past few weeks. Now everyone's saying that he's being ousted. But stuff like that's pretty public and easy to follow if it does happen. Like, historically, it's always been public and pretty easy to follow when power struggles like that are happening. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. That's why we haven't even been covering it either, because we can't even confirm if anything's happening at all, and it looks like, honestly, things are normal in China for the moment. But with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream, and I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We had 10.3 thousand people here at the peak, and 87,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We are entirely honored and appreciative to have had all of y'all here tonight, and we hope you all have enjoyed this greatly. We will be seeing you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the Sunday night fundraiser, and hopefully for the first time, we will be able to make a short war video since we haven't been able to make one for days at this point due to a lack of news in the middle of the day. But a big thanks to all of y'all once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukrainian, long live the Least Spring Army, and the Least Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on the fundraiser stream, and we look forward to having that stream with you all. And of course, big shout out to 87,000 people that were here tonight, and we do appreciate every single one of you. And we will see you tomorrow for the short war video if there is enough news to make, and the fundraiser stream at 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.